Chapter 2081. Young Master. The leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group came over again. However, this time, he brought a large piece of roasted meat. He walked over to Zhuo Junue and saw that the youth in green had woken up. He smiled at him and said to the two of them, "We roasted some meat in front and brought some for you to eat." Fengjiu blinked and looked at the mercenary in front of him. After a while, he remembered. "Oh, it's you. Young master, you still remember me?" The leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group was in his 30s or 40s. When he saw the handsome youth in green, he couldn't help but smile. "Didn't we meet in the forest a few days ago? You were talking to the old man then." Fengjiu pointed at Han Yuanzi, who was still asleep. "Old man?" The leader's smile froze. He looked at the youth in green in surprise. There weren't many people who dared to call Han Yuanzi an old man. Where did this young man come from? However, he didn't look like an ordinary person. "I came over in the afternoon and saw that the two of you were sleeping. So, I cut some meat for you. Eat it while it's hot. If it's not enough, we have more." The leader handed the roasted meat over. "No need. Then I won't stand on ceremony." Two voices sounded at the same time. The former was Zhuo Junue, while the latter was Fengjiu, who took the roasted meat. When he heard these two voices, the leader was startled. Then, he smiled. Fengjiu took the roasted meat and glared at Zhuo Junue. "This is the leader's good intentions. How can you reject it? No wonder the old man called you a blockhead." Zhuo Junue's mouth twitched. He glanced at him speechlessly and then looked away. He didn't have the face to look. When it came to food, this person would put aside all pride and dignity. "All right then, I'll head back first," the mercenary leader said before turning around to leave. "Here." Fengjiu handed a piece of roasted meat to Zhuo Junue. "Eat it." "I'm not hungry," he said, sitting quietly. Fengjiu shrugged and sat down cross-legged to eat. He also took out some wine to drink and said, "I've found the Fire's Park stone and the immortal grass, so I'm preparing to go back." Hearing this, Zhuo Junue glanced at her, then glanced at the drunk old man and asked, "You plan to leave while the old man is drunk?" He was sure that if she left just like that, the old man would be so angry that he would want to pull out his beard. "I didn't want to stay here for long. And as I said, I still have to go back and take care of things. I've been away for a few days, and I don't know how things are at home. I have to go back and take a look." Fengjiu took a sip of wine and glanced at the old man. "If he doesn't see me when he wakes up, he'll be fine in a few days. Besides, didn't I leave you my address? You can come and find me when you have time." Hearing this, Zhuo Junue looked at her quietly. He seemed to have something to say, but in the end, he lowered his head and closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Do you have something to say? We've been together for a long time. What's there that can't be said?" Chapter 2082. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and looked at him. "You don't want to leave now?" "Yes, I want you to come with me to the Zhuo family and see my grandmother." He paused for a moment, then said, "Her health is not good, and she doesn't have much time left." Fengjiu's eyes flashed, and her gaze fell on his face. "Why do you want to see your grandmother? You have to give me a reason." She had a faint guess in her heart, but she did not expect it to be true. He looked up at her and slowly said, "My grandmother once told me to find out about my grandfather, and the emerald-edged sword is a clue." "What is your grandfather's name?" she asked, her gaze falling on his face, not wanting to miss any expression on his face. "Outsiders know that my grandfather is the ancestor of the Zhuo family, but only my family knows that my grandfather's surname is Chu, and his name is Chu Batian." He stared at her and said the name that had been hidden in his heart for a long time. Hearing this name from his mouth, Fengjiu's heart moved, that's right, my master is Chu Batian. I can go with you to see your grandmother, but I want to know what happened to your family. Although she did not say it explicitly, she knew that he understood. Zhuo Junue said, I don't know much about my grandfather and grandmother, and my grandmother did not tell us in detail. She only told us a small part of it, but you can ask her personally when you see her. Feng Jiu pondered. If they were really her master's descendants, then she must go and see this person. Thus, she nodded, all right. Then let's go together. When the old man wakes up, tell him that there's nothing else here, so let's not waste time here. Yes. Zhuo Junue replied, paused for a moment, then asked, can you tell me about my grandfather? How did you meet him? He died a long time ago, and I entered the secret cave of the underwater cave by chance, and found the divine consciousness he left behind. She looked at him and said, the third thing he asked me to do back then was to find his descendants and see if they were doing well. I just never expected that you'd come to the upper continent while I've been searching for you on the lower continent. I think even he didn't expect that your grandmother would come to the upper continent. Feng Jiu looked at him and said, many powers in the lower continent know the name Chu Batian. However, he has been dead for many years and people have gradually forgotten about him. His strength can be said to be one of the strongest in the lower continent. In addition to the ancient divine sword Qin Feng in his hand, he could almost defeat all opponents. However, he was outnumbered. He's nothing compared to the experts of the upper continent, but he's a real man who dares to do things. She smiled and said, after I accidentally became his disciple, I looked up many things about him when he was young. Although he was strong in the lower continents, he never bullied the weak. If it wasn't for those people who slandered and framed him for the sake of obtaining the azure-edged sword, perhaps he would still be alive now. At this point, she sighed softly, perhaps it was because of this tragedy that caused the annihilation of his Chu clan that he felt guilty in his heart, so he sent the azure-edged sword into the myriad sword tomb when he was heavily injured. Chapter 2083. However, ever since he was old enough to understand things, he knew that he and his father were not of the Zhuo family's bloodline. This was no secret in the Zhuo family, and it was precisely because of this that their position in the Zhuo family was so awkward. The old man who was sleeping soundly turned over and bumped into a rock beside him. He woke up as well. He yawned and stretched his body as he looked at the two people sitting there. He rubbed his eyes and asked, what are you two doing sitting there? Feng Jiu glanced back and said with a smile, chatting. Here, the leader of the mercenary group brought some roasted meat. She threw the remaining piece of meat to him. He, is it the one we met in the forest? The old man took the meat and ate it. He said vaguely, this old man is hungry, but there are many opportunities to eat meat here. Most importantly, it's all delivered to me by others. Hearing this, Feng Jiu rolled her eyes and said, hurry up and eat. I'm about to leave. Are you going to stay here or are you leaving too? Cough, cough. The old man choked on the meat. He quickly swallowed the meat in his mouth and looked at Feng Jiu. You're leaving. He looked at her strangely. Why didn't a sly little fox like you sneak away when I was sleeping? The corner of Feng Jiu's mouth twitched as she glanced at him. He was right. She had wanted to sneak away while he was asleep, but who knew that Zhuo Junue would take her to see his grandmother? If he did not say that, she would have left long ago. Looking at Feng Ix's expression, the old man glared at her. Don't tell me you really have such thoughts. You want to sneak away when this old man is asleep? Let me tell you. If you dare to leave this old man behind, this old man will chase you all the way to your house. We'll leave the forest tomorrow morning. She suddenly asked, by the way, can the Aurora teleportation scroll send the three of us out of the forest? Hearing this, the old man sneered and looked at her sideways. How many people have you tried to teleport? No. She shook her head and said. It was precisely because he had never tried it that he asked him. Most teleportation scrolls can carry people. This thing that you said is a treasure, could it only be used by one person at a time? She looked at him with a strange gaze and asked. If it could only be one person, then this restriction was a little too much. It couldn't even compare to an ordinary person. That's why I said you were indulging in fantasy. The old man snorted and said, once the Aurora transmission scroll is opened, you can teleport to any place above it. What about the other transmission scrolls? If you could even bring someone with you, then this treasure would be a heaven-defying treasure. How could it fall into your hands? Feng Jiu's mouth twitched when he saw the look of disdain on his face. She knew that this old man wouldn't be able to take out any treasures, but after thinking about it, it was already a rare treasure even if she was the only one who could use it. At the very least, it would only take a blink of an eye for her to return to the Phoenix dynasty in the lower reaches of the continent. Chapter 2084. Feng Jiu stood up and dusted off her robes. She looked around and walked towards the back of the mountain. The old man hurriedly asked, "Where are you going in the middle of the night?" Feng Jiu turned around and glanced at him. "I'm going to relieve myself. Do you want to come with me?" The old man's face twitched and he glared at her in embarrassment. He turned back to Zhuo Junyue and said, "Look at her. She doesn't look like a girl at all. She's clearly a little bastard." Zhuo Junyue ignored the old man and looked at Feng Jiu. "Do you need me to keep watch?" "No need." Feng Jiu waved her hand without looking back. Her figure gradually disappeared into the night. Did the little girl take the opportunity to slip away? Han Yuanzi asked worriedly. He looked in the direction Feng Jiu had left and shook his head. He paced back and forth with his hands behind his back, waiting for Feng Jiu to return. Zhuo Junyue saw that Han Yuanzi was worried that she had slipped away and said, "I invited her to the Zhuo family. She agreed, so she won't leave." The old man was stunned. "You invited her to the Zhuo family? What for?" Zhuo Junyue lowered his gaze and remained silent. The old man's gaze shifted and he asked, "Could it be that you're related to that little girl's master?" "Her master should be my grandfather," Zhuo Junyue said. The old man was speechless. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? About 100 meters away from here, which was also the region behind the volcano, Feng Jiu sat down cross-legged at the foot of the mountain. She wanted to see if the two immortal grasses were attracted by the aura of the primal chaos green lotus in her body. She placed her hands on her knees and relaxed. At the same time, she activated the aura of the chaotic green lotus in her body. A wisp of the aura of the chaotic green lotus seeped out and filled the air. Then she quietly looked around and paid attention to her surroundings. There were more than 2 angel grasses. If she released the aura of the chaotic green lotus, would it attract more angel grasses? At this moment, she was looking forward to it and excited. About half an incense stick's worth of time later, her divine sense noticed that 2 stalks of illuminating flame grass were moving towards her. The 2 stalks of angel grass moved from the ground, stopped beside her, and used their leaves to touch her body. Finally, they pulled themselves out of the soil. One of them jumped into her arms, and the other hid in her sleeve. She was stunned for a long time. It was really attracted by the aura of the chaotic green lotus? She muttered to herself in disbelief. What made her even more incredulous was that in the next half an incense stick's worth of time, several more stalks of celestial grass came running over. Some were smaller, some were bigger, and each stalk of celestial grass seemed to have a medicine spirit attached to it. It was as if they had gained sentience, and they all came running towards her. Seeing this scene, she quickly withdrew the primal chaos green lotus's aura and stored the fairy grass in her space. She had a feeling that those people wouldn't be able to find the fairy grass. Even if they did, they would have already come to her place. Chapter 2085. The chaotic azure lotus was so powerful. Why had the old man given it to her all those years ago? Moreover, it had been quiet for so long and nothing else had happened because of it. Could it be that it would continue to be so peaceful? She felt that it was unlikely. The chaotic green lotus in her body had already fused with her. If it could no longer be hidden in the future, then what kind of trouble would it cause? She had no way of knowing all of this, nor could she estimate it. The old man, who was waiting there, saw that Fengjiu had not returned after so long and could not help but feel worried. Do you think she slipped away? Why hasn't she returned yet? She'll be back soon. Xue Junyue said calmly. He was not nervous or worried. She'll be back soon. Tell me, how many times have you said this since just now? The old man stared at him and asked while pulling his beard. How many times have you asked? How many times have I said it? He said and glanced at the old man. You don't even know how to count. Have you really become old? Hearing this, the old man glared at him. You little rascal. You've been with that little rascal for so long that you've learned bad things. Are you going to bully this old man? What do you mean by that little rascal? A voice suddenly sounded and gave the old man a fright. He patted his chest and turned around with a frightened expression. When he saw Fengjiu, who had come to his side with a smile, he couldn't help but exhale softly. Are you trying to scare this old man to death? Why didn't you make a sound when you came back? This old man thought you were swallowed by a beast. Which beast dared to swallow me? Fengjiu said with a smile. He found a place to sit down and said to Xue Junyue, go and rest for a while. We'll leave when the sun comes up. Rest up first. Xue Junyue replied. After glancing at the old man, he went to the place where the old man had been resting. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to rest. You slept for so long. Are you going to keep watch tonight? It's my turn for the second half of the night. Fengjiu said to Hun Yuanzi. He did not wait for a reply and yawned and closed his eyes. The old man looked at the two people who had fallen asleep with their eyes closed. He felt a lump in his throat before he could exhale. It was very uncomfortable. Why were they so worrisome? If it were anyone else, who would dare to ask the Mount Tai of the sect to keep watch for them? Only these two dared to treat him like this. They were really too unruly. Looking at the two of them like this, he could not sleep, nor could he sit still. Thus, he walked around with his hands behind his back. The first half of the night passed quickly, and it was considered peaceful. However, when it was the second half of the night, he felt that the atmosphere around him had changed. Although the murderous intent was restrained, he could still feel it. He came to Fengjiu and Xue Junyue's side and whispered to them, wake up, there's movement. Fengjiu woke up when the atmosphere around them became oppressive. With her eyes closed, she used her divine sense to scan the surroundings. She saw that more than 10 teams had gathered together and were surrounding them. She opened her eyes. At the same time, she saw Xue Junyue opening his eyes and looking at her. Seeing this, she smiled. Looks like there's an ambush. She stood up and flicked her sleeves. She looked around with a thoughtful gaze. Chapter 2086. The old man said in surprise. He retracted his divine sense and said, more than a dozen groups of people against one mercenary group. This time, even if they have strong mercenaries, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to escape unscathed. No, they're already retreating. She curled her lips into a smile. In the dark night, the mercenaries dressed in mercenary uniforms quietly retreated. They quickly retreated before those people realized that they were retreating. It seemed that their vigilance was not bad. However, among the retreating mercenaries, there was a mercenary who seemed to have received an order and came towards them. His movements were very fast and without a sound, he arrived in front of them in a short while. Hunyuan Immortal Lord, our leader asked me to tell you to hurry up and leave. More than a dozen groups of people are surrounding us. If you don't leave now, it will be too late. The old man was stunned for a moment, then nodded, "Oh, we know. You guys go first. Take care." The mercenary said and quickly caught up with their mercenary group. When her divine sense swept over the mercenaries, she suddenly saw a familiar figure. She was slightly surprised and a little stunned, then she chuckled, "I didn't expect to see him here. It's a pity that I only saw him now." The familiar figure in the mercenary uniform was her brother, Guan Shilin. Thinking of him, she couldn't help but smile, and the smile on her face widened. The more Hunyuan Immortal Lord and Zhuejun saw her standing there smiling, the more confused they were. Zhuejun didn't ask because he knew the old man would definitely ask curiously. Sure enough, when he turned his gaze to the old man, he heard the old man's voice. "What are you smiling about? Why are you smiling so strangely?" Fengjiu released her divine sense and saw that her brother had retreated with the mercenaries. A large group of people quietly disappeared into the night. She then retracted her gaze and smiled, "Nothing." As she spoke, she crossed her arms and rubbed her hands. She rotated her waist and her eyes were filled with a sly smile. "The moonlight tonight is really good. Since we can't sleep, let's loosen up. Loosen my muscles." The old man glanced at her and said, "You're not a warm-hearted person. What are you planning? What do you mean by not being a warm-hearted person?" Fengjiu snorted and said, "They gave us barbecued meat to eat. No matter what, we should help them, right? Why would you be so kind? I don't believe it." As the old man spoke, he gestured towards the direction that the mercenary left and asked, "Is there someone you know in there?" "Yeah." She replied with a smile and did not say anything else. Instead, she looked ahead and listened to the sounds coming from there. Ran away. Why is there no one here? Why did he run away? Could it be that someone leaked the information? How is it possible for someone to leak the information? We don't have any relationship with that mercenary group. They must have sensed something and ran away. The fire is still here and they haven't had time to clean up this place. They shouldn't have run far. Chase after them. The murderous aura that was originally restrained completely diffused from their bodies at this moment. The footsteps that were originally light because they were afraid of being discovered also became disorderly at this moment. Chapter 2087. However, just as the dozen or so teams were about to give chase, they suddenly saw three figures standing in front of them. Everyone was stunned when they saw the old man and the two young men, especially those who recognized Hunyuan Zi. At this moment, hesitation appeared on their faces. The other party was Master Hunyuan. If they were to fight him, they were afraid that, thinking of that very likely outcome, the leaders of a few teams quietly gestured for their teams to retreat and quickly retreat. Seeing the teams retreat, the others were stunned. One of the teams asked in a daze, "Why are they running? Didn't we agree to work together? There are only 3 people and they're already scared off." After saying this, that person came to a realization. That's not right. Why are they running when there are only 3 people? Since they ran when they saw the 3 of them, could it be that the 3 of them are all powerful figures? The leaders of the remaining 9 teams were still staring at the 3 people in front of them, sizing them up. Unfortunately, even with their strength, they couldn't figure out the other party's strength. They couldn't help but hesitate when they wanted to attack. "Who are the 3 of you? Why are you blocking our way?" One of them shouted. At the same time, he attacked the green-robed youth with his aura. He wanted to use his aura to test the other party's strength, but who knew? Why do you care who we are? If you know what's good for you, leave all your valuables behind. Otherwise, Fengjiu snorted coldly. Her words made the old man and Zhuo Junyue's lips twitch involuntarily. So this was her plan all along. Besides helping the group of mercenaries to stop these people, he also wanted to plunder all the treasures on these people. Ruthless. Too ruthless. She was a bandit. It didn't matter if she was a bandit, but how could she drag them, two good citizens, down with her? Girl, this old man is still the sex Mount Tai. Say, if news of what happened tonight spreads, won't my reputation be ruined? Master Hunyuan sighed with a worried expression. Fengjiu glanced at him and said, it's not like you haven't done this before. The first time is unfamiliar, the second time is familiar. What's there to be conflicted about? Besides, if you don't want the news to spread, it's simple. Just kill them all, and naturally, the news won't spread. If it really doesn't work and the news gets out, then they can only praise you. Her voice paused, and she raised her chin towards the people in front of her, indicating, look, look, these people are all ferocious, how can they be good people? You robbed them because you robbed too little. The old man's face twitched as he muttered, this old man knew that following you would definitely lead me astray. It's such a pity that my grand sect, Mount Tai, would one day be reduced to being a bandit. What are you mumbling about? If you really don't want to do it, that's fine too. Go to the side and when the time comes, you won't get a single thing from us. As Fengjiu spoke, he looked at the people in front of him and raised his voice, hurry up and hand over everything you have on you. Otherwise, don't even think about escaping today. Hearing this, those people cursed angrily, you brat, do you want to die? Do you know who your grandfather is? You. Chapter 2088. Ah! Roar! A cry of alarm rang out, followed by the roar of the sacred beast. Following the roar of the cloud-swallowing beast, a powerful pressure that could be seen with the naked eye spread out in the air. This pressure enveloped the entire area, causing everyone's bodies to stiffen as they felt a chill run down their spines. In that instant, the gigantic devouring cloud beast pounced forward, like a fierce tiger pouncing on its prey, pressing down on the young man who was cursing Fengjiu under its claws. Under the pressure of its claws, the sound of bones breaking could be heard, accompanied by the man's scream. No! Save me! Save me! An! As the cry for help fell, swallowing cloud bit off that person's neck and swung it, throwing the bloody corpse in front of everyone. That neck looked like it was on the verge of breaking out, and that person's eyes were wide open in shock, causing everyone to break out in cold sweat. They could not help but take a step back, their faces filled with fear as they stared at the youth, and the sacred beast that was elegantly wiping the blood from the corner of its mouth. What the hell? They actually saw the word elegance on a bloodthirsty sacred beast. However, that sacred beast was just squatting there, lazily wiping its mouth with its front paw. It even stuck out its tongue, which somehow made them think of elegance. I'm going to die of boredom. Old White also ran out from Fengjiu's space with a whoosh, flying over everyone's heads in the form of a white dragon, blocking everyone's back, laughing excitedly, Master, are we going to take care of them? Mutated beast. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as they looked at the snow-white dragon and the strange horn on its head. Their faces turned pale with a swoosh as they turned to look at the young man in green with shock in their eyes. What was the background of this young man? It was fine to have a sacred beast, but how could there be such a rare mutated beast? Not only were the others shocked, even the old man and Zhou Junue were shocked by Fengjiu's contracted beasts. They knew about the sacred beast, but where did this mutated white dragon come from? How could he have two such rare contracted beasts? More importantly, shouldn't normal people only be able to contract one beast? Why did she have two? If they knew that Fengjiu had more than two contracted beasts, they would be even more surprised. Fengjiu glanced at Lao Bai and then said to the frightened people, what do you think? Are you going to obediently hand it over? Or do you want us to kill you and then take your things? Think about it carefully. Don't regret it too late. Hearing this, the old man and Zhou Junue stood quietly behind her. From the looks of it, there was no need for them to do anything. She could handle it herself. The old man stood behind Fengjiu and looked at her strangely. Sure enough, there were traces to be found. From the first time he met her, she had directly swindled his treasures and left him behind. This person had done this kind of thing more than once or twice. Looking at how familiar she was with this, she must have done this kind of thing no less than 100 times. Thinking of this, he stroked his beard. Why did he feel that she was simple and honest that day? He had really been deceived by her pure appearance. Chapter 2089. But if they didn't hand it over, they might not even be able to leave this place alive. If we give you our things, you'll let us go? One of them frowned and asked, his gaze landing on Fengjiu. Of course, I'm not a bloodthirsty demon. Although you guys aren't good people, at least you don't have to die. Leave your things and go. Fengjiu smiled and stared at them. Hearing this, those people looked at each other, and one of them asked worriedly, what if we leave our things behind and you attack us again? Fengjiu raised his voice, his face full of astonishment. How could that be? How could I do something so immoral? You guys have to have faith in my character. Hearing this, Han Yuanzi and Zhua Junyue's mouths twitched. Character? All right. They felt that they didn't see any character in her, and the credibility of her words wasn't high. This was their experience in cutting skin. Those people didn't think so much, but they didn't have any other choice. If it was just the three of them, it would be one thing. Even if they went all out, some of them might still be able to leave alive. However, in addition to their unfathomable strength, there were also two powerful contracted beasts here. If they fought, they didn't have the confidence to escape unscathed. But if they could keep their lives by handing over their things, even if they were unwilling, it was still better than losing their lives. At this moment, looking at the people who quickly retreated when they saw these three people, they cursed in their hearts. Could it be that those people already knew that these three people weren't to be trifled with, so they quickly retreated? Damn it, at least they said that they would work together. If they wanted to retreat, they should have warned them. Now, even if they wanted to retreat, they had nowhere to go. They could only obediently hand over their things. After some hesitation, they took off their things and retreated step by step. However, at this moment, the voice of the green-robed youth sounded again. All of you better be obedient. Otherwise, I'll let my sacred beast strip off your clothes. At that time, it'll be ugly. Hearing this, those who still had some things on them froze. Although the youth didn't say who he was talking to, they inexplicably felt guilty, as if those words were directed at them. In the end, they could only resist the urge to curse and put down their things on the ground. They raised their hands and retreated step by step. This time, I really don't have anything. Han Yuanzi and Zhua Junyue were already indifferent to Fengjiu's words. They looked at the things on the ground, and then looked at Fengjiu. Just to speak, they saw her turn to look at Zhua Junyue. I'll have to trouble you to keep those things. Okay. Zhua Junyue responded and went forward to pick up the things on the ground. He watched as those people fled after retreating to a safe distance, then turned back to look at Fengjiu. Why are you looking at me? I'm a man of my word. Since I said I'd let them go, I'll naturally let them go. My integrity is guaranteed. Fengjiu said with a smile. She glanced at Tun Yun and Lao Bai. You two, go into the space. Hearing her words, Zhua Junyue couldn't find anything to say. He just picked up the things and handed them to her. Chapter 2090. Here are the items, Zhua Junyue said and gestured for her to take the items. Fengjiu looked at the items in his hand and put them away with a smile. She sighed softly, I've gained quite a lot from entering the volcano forest. I knew I should come out more often. Look, I've earned a lot. Lao Bai stroked his beard and glanced at her, what do you mean by earning a lot? You're the one who robbed us. He really couldn't tell that this little girl was so capable in this line of work. He really didn't know what this little girl used to do. She put the items away and planned to organize them later. She would keep the useful items and sell the useless ones. Finally, she looked at the two of them. Let's go. It's good that we're out of the forest now. Let's go out on our swords. It should save us a lot of time. Are we really going to the Zhuo family? The old man looked at her and asked. Yes, let's go to the Zhuo family. She nodded and took the rainbow feather from her waist and threw it into the air. The beautiful feather changed and became bigger with a whoosh. It floated lightly in the air. This treasure is not bad. The old man was surprised. He looked at the beautiful rainbow feather and stroked his beard, asking, "This is the rainbow glaze feather, right? I didn't expect a little girl like you to have so many treasures on you. You didn't rob this too, did you?" Fengjiu tapped her toes and leaped onto the feather. She sat down cross-legged and said, "Are you going or not? If not, I'll go." As soon as she finished speaking, she took the lead and flew high into the air. After passing through the air pressure, she flew even higher and headed out of the forest. "Wait for us!" The old man shouted and threw out his flying device to chase after her. Zhuo Junue summoned his flying sword and followed behind the two of them. However, when they passed through the air pressure, their bodies fell slightly. In the volcanic forest area, the heat in the air formed a pressure, especially in mid-air. The pressure was especially obvious. Ordinary cultivators couldn't fly on their swords under this pressure. Therefore, most of the people who came to the volcanic forest to train were on foot. Another thing was, if they directly flew through the forest on their swords, it wouldn't be considered training. Among them, only those with real strength could withstand the pressure in the air. However, just like Feng Jiayu and the others, they had to step on the aircraft and fly up into the air. They had to break through the air pressure to fly up to a high altitude before they could truly fly on the aircraft. Behind him, Zhuo Junue flew with the wind on his flying sword. His gaze was fixed on the green-robed youth who was sitting on the feather. His sleeves were fluttering, and his black hair was fluttering. His hands were casually propped up on the feather behind him, and he looked at ease and contented. He couldn't help but think, she's really a strange person. The more I interact with her these days, the more I feel that she's unfathomable. Whether it's her way of doing things or her strength, she's always exceeded my expectations. The first time they met, she cured his poison, took the teleportation scroll from the old man, and played a trick on the old man. He was so angry that he stomped his feet. When they met again, he heard how she used a trick to save those people. When she dealt with the fiendish cultivators, she was ruthless and merciless. Her clean methods and strength were shocking. Later, they found out that the youth in front of them was actually a woman. Chapter 2091. Thinking of her forceful methods, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. She was probably the only one who could do such a thing. He really didn't know that when his grandfather took her in as a disciple, did he know that she had such a personality? Thinking of his grandfather, he had an indescribable feeling in his heart. On one hand, he felt that there was finally news about the matter that his grandmother wanted him to inquire about. On the other hand, he felt that it was a pity that he could only learn about his grandfather from her. He knew that in his father's heart, this matter had always been on his mind. If his father found out about this, what would he do? At the same time, in a corner of the lobby on the first floor of the Heavenly Pill building in 100 River City. Leng Hua, don't you feel that there's something wrong with Little Fool recently? Du Fan came to Leng Hua's side and asked, gesturing for him to look at the busy figure in front of him. What's wrong? Leng Hua looked at the account book in his hand and asked without raising his head. Everything's wrong. Du Fan took the account book away from his hand and tucked it under his arm, saying, a few days ago, she often went to your side and often called you Big Brother Leng Hua, Big Brother Leng Hua, but now it's like she's treating you like you're transparent. Don't you think it's strange? Also, have you noticed? Why do I feel like she's lost a lot of weight recently? And her face has been pale recently. Could it be that I really went too far last time and she's sick from holding it in? At this point, Du Fan couldn't help but feel a little worried. Little fool, this girl was quite likable. She didn't have any ulterior motives and was also very straightforward. Especially as the daughter of a family, she didn't put on any airs and treated people very sincerely. Although she was smiling every day, he always felt that her smile was a little gloomy. Hearing this, Leng Hua looked at the girl who was busy in front of him. He saw that she had indeed lost a lot of weight recently. Her originally round face was now slimmed down to a sharp chin. However, her face seemed to be a little pale, and she did not look as happy as before. "I'll talk to her later," Leng Hua said. "And, then when she wants to go back, tell her to go to the backyard. I'll go too. I think I might have said too much last time." Du Fan sighed and felt a little guilty. She was a good girl. If she really took things too hard because of his words, then it would be strange if his master didn't skin him alive when he returned. However, as the two of them were talking, they suddenly heard a cry of surprise coming from the front. "Waiter, waiter! What happened to you?" The two of them looked towards the front and saw that the busy waiter had suddenly fainted. Fortunately, there was a medicinal maid beside him supporting him so that he didn't fall to the ground. Seeing this, the two of them quickly went forward. "Look, look! I said that there must be something wrong with her." Just as I was saying that, something really did happen. As Du Fan spoke, he anxiously ordered one of the maidservants, "Go, tell Fan Lin to go to the backyard." At this time, Leng Hua had already gone forward to carry the girl and quickly walked to the backyard. Du Fan followed beside him. Fan Lin, who was on the second floor, also came to the backyard on the first floor after hearing the maidservant's words. As soon as he entered the backyard, he was pulled inside by Du Fan. Come, quickly go and see how that waiter is doing. She suddenly fainted in front of us and her face is frighteningly pale. Before the master left, he told us to take good care of her. If he came back and saw her like this, it would be strange if he didn't beat us. Chapter 2092. Let's take a look at her first. We'll talk after that. Du Fan dragged him into the room and came to the bedside. He pointed at the unconscious girl on the bed and said, quick, let's take a look at her." Fan Lin sat down on the chair beside the bed unhurriedly and reached out to check her pulse. After a while, he withdrew his hand and said to the two, "What's wrong with her? She's a rich young lady. How did she become malnourished?" What? Du Fan was stunned. Leng Hua beside him asked, "How is she? Why did she faint?" "She probably didn't eat well. In addition, she used too much energy and has some depression in her heart. It's not a big problem. As long as we give her something to eat when she wakes up, her body will slowly recover." As Fan Lin spoke, he stood up and looked at the two of them. He asked strangely, "What kind of work did you give her? How did you make her work too much and use up too much energy? Don't tell me you took advantage of the absence of the master to bully her. How could that be?" Du Fan quickly said, "Actually, it's like this." He briefly told Fan Lin what happened that day. After hearing Du Fan's words, Fan Lin nodded in realization. "I see. No wonder she has depression in her heart." He smiled and stepped forward to pat Leng Hua's shoulder. "Watch over her for the next 2 days. Give her some medicine. I'll get someone to boil some medicine for her to drink. Didn't you say she was fine? Why does she need to take medicine?" Du Fan couldn't help but ask. "Open some qi to disperse the depression. The rest will depend on you guys to open her." As Fan Lin spoke, he walked out with large strides. "You stay here and watch over her. I'll get someone to boil some ginseng soup and send it over," Leng Hua said to Du Fan. He was about to walk out when Du Fan grabbed his hand. "Don't. You stay here. I'll take care of this." As Du Fan spoke, he hurriedly walked out without waiting for him to react. However, when he reached the door, he paused and turned back to ask, "Oh right, Xiao'er fainted. Should we get someone to inform her family?" Hearing this, Leng Hua looked at Xiao'er, who was still unconscious, and said gently, "Let's not talk about it for now. We'll talk about it when she wakes up, lest her father gets worried." "Alright, then I'll be going," he said, before walking away. Leng Hua was keeping watch in the room. Seeing that the person on the bed hadn't woken up yet, he sat beside him and watched quietly. The door creaked open, and Leng Hua, dressed in black, walked in. "Sister." Leng Hua stood up and greeted her. "How is she?" Leng Shuang looked at the waiter on the bed and asked. "She said she didn't eat properly and fainted from hunger. Also, she's depressed," Leng Hua said. Hearing this, Leng Shuang looked at Leng Hua and said, "When she wakes up, talk to her. Let her rest well for the next few days and recover her body." "Okay, I got it," Leng Hua said. Seeing his sister turn and walk out, he got up and walked her out. After returning to the room and sitting by the bed for a while, Xiao'er slowly woke up. Seeing that she was awake, Leng Hua smiled gently. "You're awake." When he saw that she was about to get up, he motioned to her. "Just lie down. I'll talk to you for a while." "Brother Leng Hua, what's wrong with me?" Xiao'er pulled at the quilt. She was a little nervous and restrained. Leng Hua smiled gently. "Have you not eaten properly recently?" Chapter 2093. Seeing this, Leng Hua looked at her and asked gently, "Xiao, have you been unhappy recently because you heard what Du Fan said to me?" "No, no." She quickly shook her head, afraid that he would misunderstand. "Actually, you don't have to be like this. You were originally very good. You don't have to care too much about what others think." Xiao narrowed her eyes. She pulled the blanket and didn't speak. She didn't dare to look up at him. Leng Hua didn't say anything else. He just looked at her and asked with a smile, "Do you want to know how we followed Master back then?" "Ah." She looked at him in shock. Can I tell you?" "There's nothing that can't be said. Everyone in the Phoenix Guards knows. However, they only know the general idea and don't know the details." He smiled and said gently, "Master is someone who isn't afraid of what the world thinks and isn't bound by the world. You don't know." Back then he sat by the bed and told her about what happened back then with a gentle voice and a smile on his face. Xiao listened attentively. Her eyes were sometimes filled with amazement and sometimes looked at Leng Hua in disbelief. She looked at the undisguised respect and conviction in his eyes when he talked about his master. She was mesmerized by the light and expression in his eyes. She never knew that they had such a past. She didn't even know that such a thing had happened to them in the past, that it was like this back then. "Not only did Master change the fate of my brother and sister, she also taught us how to behave and deal with things. We always believed that Master's taste was unique. Someone who could be chosen by her must be special." At this point, he smiled gently and his gentle gaze fell on her face. "Not only did Master say that you were very good, but after interacting with you, we all know that you are indeed very good. You really are very good like this. You don't have to change anything. Just follow your heart. Don't give yourself too much pressure." Hearing him say so much, Xiao knew that he was trying to enlighten her. She looked at him with some guilt and said softly, "Brother Leng Hua, I'm sorry for making you worry." Hearing this, he smiled and asked slowly, "Your body is a little weak now. I want you to rest at home for a few days to recover. Do you think that's okay? Then, can I come again in the future?" She asked nervously. "Of course." He smiled and reached out to stroke her head, saying, "You should quickly recover before coming over to help." Seeing him touch her head like a child, she was a little shy and a little happy. She nodded, Well, I will take care of my body as soon as possible. I will eat well when I go back. That's good. Lang Hua nodded. At this moment, he heard the door open. He turned around and saw Du Fan carrying something in. You're awake. Du Fan looked at the waiter on the bed and said with a smile, It's good that you're awake. The food is ready. Come, come. I'll help you sit up. Lang Hua said, reaching out to help her up. Thank you. She thanked him softly. Perhaps it was because her state of mind had changed, but her appetite had also improved. Smelling the fragrance, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Seeing this, Du Fan and Lang Hua looked at each other and smiled. They brought the things to the small square table beside the bed. Chapter 2094. Hearing this, the waiter smiled sweetly and looked at Lang Hua. Thank you, brother Lang Hua. Thank you, brother Du, alright. Hurry up and eat. Du Fan said with a smile. Seeing her happy smile, he said to the two of them, I'll go to the front and take a look first. As he spoke, he left first. While the waiter wasn't paying attention, he made a fierce gesture at Lang Hua. Although Fengjiu wasn't here at the Heavenly Pill Dispensary, with the two stewards, Lang Hua and Du Fan, as well as the Phoenix Guards and some other people in the dispensary, everything went smoothly and no one caused any trouble. Although the elixirs and medicines in the dispensary weren't cheap, there were still many people who came to buy medicine every day. And on this evening, when the Heavenly Pill Dispensary was about to close, a person came to seek medical treatment. And the person who brought this person to seek medical treatment was someone they didn't expect, Murong Yixian. A man in luxurious clothes came with Murong Yixian, and behind the man in luxurious clothes were 4 cultivators with decent cultivation. Is your master here? On the first floor of the Heavenly Pill Dispensary, Murong Yixian looked at Lang Hua and asked. Lang Hua's gaze swept past the man in luxurious clothes beside Murong Yixian, and then fell on Murong Yixian. Instead of answering, he asked, Is there something you need from my master? Although Lang Hua's attitude was gentle, his behavior was distant and indifferent, so Murong Yixian directly introduced the man in luxurious clothes beside him. This is a relative of Immortal Mu Xian from the Huaxian sect. He's here to seek medical treatment. My master isn't here. Lang Hua said, and made an inviting gesture to them. Please. We're just about to close the shop and rest. Seeing this, the man in luxurious clothes frowned slightly, and there was a trace of displeasure on his handsome face. If it weren't for Murong Yixian's instructions earlier, he would have definitely taught this impudent young man a lesson. When he heard Lang Hua's words, Murong Yixian was stunned. He then asked, Then did she say when she would return? At this moment, he didn't think that Lang Hua was being perfunctory, because he knew that Fengjiu wasn't the kind of person who would stay in one place forever. Thinking about it, he must have something to do. Young Master Murong must be joking. As subordinates, how would we know when the master will return? Lang Hua said warmly. Looking at Murong Yixian in front of him, he said, You'd better look for another doctor. I don't want to delay the treatment of my illness. How dare you? The man in luxurious clothes bellowed as he stared sharply at Lang Hua. You're just a mere steward, yet you're so arrogant. Ziheng. Murong Yixian furrowed his brows slightly and looked at the finely dressed man beside him. He was a little displeased with his sudden shout. No one knew better than him how protective Fengjiu was of his own people. How could the people by her side be berated by others? What's more, this Lang Hua was someone she regarded highly and had been by her side for many years. Naturally, he wasn't someone an ordinary person could compare to. Lang Hua acted as if he didn't see this scene. He still had a gentle smile on his face as he looked at Murong Yixian. Young Master Murong, please. Seeing this, Murong Yixian sighed inwardly and said, Then we'll come back another day. Once he finished speaking, he turned around and left. When the finely dressed man saw this, he frowned and swept a glance at Leng Hua with a sullen face. He snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and left. Chapter 2095. Du Fan snorted and said, "Does this Murong Yi Xian have nothing better to do? Why did he bring this kind of person to our place? That finely dressed man is sick." Fan Lin walked out with light steps as he spoke slowly. "He's definitely sick. There's something wrong with his head." Luo Yu crossed his arms and leaned against the counter. "Why doesn't he take a look at himself? He brought a few people and wanted to throw a tantrum here." "Humph. If it weren't for you holding me back just now, I definitely would have come out and taught him a lesson." Fan Lin smiled. "He really is sick, and it's a fatal illness." There was a smile in his eyes as he said, "But this person's luck isn't too good. He came at the wrong time and didn't meet Master. Speaking of which, even if Master was here, whether or not he would be willing to help is another matter. There's no need to pay attention to it. We just need to complete the task Master gave us." Leng Hua said warmly. Everyone nodded. Du Fan then said, "Speaking of which, Master has been gone for a few days. We don't know when he'll be back. We don't know if Master has met that bastard Han Rong yet. Even if he escaped this time, he won't be able to escape next time. Do you think he can still live after being targeted by Master?" As Luo Yu spoke, he waved his hand at them and said, "I'm going back to rest. If there's anything, call me. You guys go rest. I'm going back to the manor to take a look." Leng Hua said to everyone. After tidying up the matters in the building, he left through the back door and headed towards the Foam Manor. On the other side, the finely dressed man walking on the main street looked at Murong Yi Xian and said, "You said that being courteous to the ghost doctor is one thing, but is there a need to be so courteous to a mere steward? Look at that brat's attitude. It really makes people angry." Murong Yi Xian's brow furrowed when he heard this. He turned his head slightly and glanced at the finely dressed man. "That's Fengzhou's person. Even if he's just a steward, he's still someone she values. Didn't I say it already? Since you want to seek medical treatment, you have to lower your attitude. If you continue to act like before, then I'll go back to the sect and apologize to Immortal Mu Xian. You can go and seek medical treatment by yourself." "You." He stared at him, his face dark. Murong Yishuan looked at him coldly. "I've already said that even if I brought you here, I might not be able to get her to treat you. If it wasn't for Immortal Mu Xian's repeated requests, I wouldn't have done such a thankless task." The luxuriously dressed man was furious, but he didn't express it. He forcefully suppressed it. "All right, I understand." In his heart, he was thinking. He really didn't believe that he couldn't get the ghost doctor to treat him. At noon the next day, the man in luxurious clothes brought the 4 cultivators behind him to the Heavenly Pill building again. However, he did not come with Murong Yishuan today. After entering the Heavenly Pill building, he began to look around from the first floor. When he saw that the pills, which were rare even in their clan, were being sold at a high price on the first floor, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He never thought that this Heavenly Pill building would really be like what the outside said. The pills that were not available in other places were all available here. It was said that the pills on the second floor were even more precious and of higher quality. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but be moved. After looking around the first floor, he wanted to go up to the second floor to take a look. However, he didn't know that going up to the second floor required registration. Moreover, the people following him couldn't follow him up. Chapter 2096. Du Fan glanced at her and said, "There won't be any accidents in our building. You can't bring any attendants when you go upstairs. This is the rule." He pointed at the words hanging on the wall with the building's rules. "What if I insist?" The finely dressed man asked in disbelief. "You can choose to leave. Otherwise, we can send you out of the heavenly pill building. Du Fan gently fanned himself with the folding fan in his hand. He looked at the finely dressed man in front of him and said with a smile, if you have the guts, you can try. He wouldn't be as gentle as Leng Hua. If this person dared to behave atrociously here, he wouldn't care if he was a relative of the immortal Mu Xian. If he angered him, he wouldn't give him a good time. The finely dressed man's face turned ugly when he heard this. He still wanted to seek medical treatment here. If he really fought, he didn't want to see the doctor anymore. He suppressed his anger and turned to leave with a flick of his sleeve. Pfft. Seeing him turn and leave, Du Fan sneered. He still sat there leisurely. In the next 2 days, that person didn't come again. Murong Yi Xian didn't come either. It seemed to be leisurely and calm. Seeing that there was nothing to do, Du Fan came to Leng Hua's side and asked, Xiao has been home for 2 or 3 days, right? Didn't you go to see how she's been these 2 days? Hearing this, Leng Hua was slightly surprised. You want to see her? What do you mean I want to see her? I'm not going. You should be the one to go. The little girl fell ill because of you. She's been home for a few days. It's more reasonable for you to visit her. Du Fan said with a smile, holding the folding fan in his hand. Leng Hua couldn't help but smile, so it wasn't those people who hurt her. Du Fan coughed lightly and said, aren't we free now? Anyway, there's nothing to do. I'll watch over here. She's also here to help. Since the master isn't here, it's better for you to go and see her. It's not convenient for me to go, Leng Hua shook his head and said with a smile, Xiao is a girl. How can I visit her? It's not good for her. Patriarch Yang can be considered familiar with us. Last time, you helped him out by selling him a pill. He has always remembered this favor of yours. I think it's good that you're there. Maybe he's having a good time. Du Fan joked. Hearing this, Leng Hua paused and thought for a moment, then said, if you really want to visit her, why don't you let my sister go? After all, both of them are women, so no one will gossip about them. Poochie. Ha 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 ha. Du Fan couldn't help but laugh. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but overflow. He gently waved the fan in his hand and cast a sidelong glance at Du Fan. Let your sister go. What's your sister's name? Ling Shuang, cold as ice, let your sister visit the patient expressionlessly. Don't you think it's easy for others to misunderstand? My sister is a very nice person. Hearing him say that his sister was too cold, he couldn't help but refute. Yes, she's very nice. We all know that your sister is cold on the outside but warm on the inside, but others don't know. Besides, your sister doesn't treat people as gently as you do. With her cold and taciturn personality, what do you think she would do if she went to the Yang family? He asked with a teasing smile on his face. Chapter 2097. Oh. Leng Hua is going to visit the second young lady. Fan Lin walked out of nowhere and looked at him with a smile. I didn't say I was going. He shook his head helplessly and smiled. These people really had nothing to do and were just making fun of him. I'm not busy these 2 days. Since you have nothing to do, you can make a trip to the Yang family to see little second Mississippi. Oh right, I've also made some pills for her. You can send them to her while you're at it. Let her take them once a day for 3 days. As he spoke, Fan Lin took out a bottle of medicine from his sleeve and handed it to Leng Hua. Seeing this, Leng Hua smiled, took it, and said, all right. I'll go then. He took the bottle and said to them, you guys keep an eye on this place. I'll be back in a while. All right, go ahead. Du Fan waved his fan and said with a smile. He watched Leng Hua leave and then said with a smile, actually, I think the second young lady is quite good. She's not bad. Fan Lin nodded. Luo Yu walked out and glanced at the two of them. Don't worry about it. Leng Hua is younger than the two of you. I don't see you guys in a hurry to get married. No hurry. No hurry. Du Fan and Fan Lin said at the same time. Then, they looked at each other and smiled. They turned around and went about their own business. Humph. Not in a hurry. He snorted softly and touched his face. He muttered softly, you guys aren't in a hurry, but I'm in a hurry. Why don't any girls like me? After leaving the Heavenly Pill building, Leng Hua walked on the street and headed in the direction of the Yang family. He walked at a leisurely pace and looked at the bustling streets from time to time. When he passed by a pastry shop, he remembered that girls usually like to eat pastries. So, he went into the pastry shop and bought a few boxes of pastries as a gift for visiting people. A man in luxurious clothes in a restaurant inadvertently glanced around and caught a glimpse of a figure on the street. His eyes flashed slightly. Was it the steward of the Heavenly Pill building? She looked behind him and saw that he was alone without anyone accompanying him. She couldn't help but reveal a smile that wasn't a smile. After walking for a while, Leng Hua knew that someone was following him even though he didn't look back. His pace was neither fast nor slow. He walked at the same pace as before and didn't deliberately speed up. When he came to a turn, he stopped and turned around. Who's there? Come out. Seeing that the youth had discovered them, the man in luxurious clothes was slightly surprised. He walked out and looked at the youth. He asked in confusion, aren't you an ordinary person who can't cultivate? How did he discover that we were following him? Leng Hua looked at the man in luxurious clothes, his face still as gentle as before. Why are you following me? I would like to invite Steward Leng to have a cup of tea. I wonder if you would do me the honor. The man in luxurious clothes said casually as he stared at the gentle youth. 2. What kind of ability did this youth, who didn't have any spiritual aura, have? Hearing the man in luxurious clothes' words, Leng Hua smiled warmly and said, you're following me today. I'm sure young Master Murong doesn't know. He doesn't know, but so what? The man raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Chapter 2098. Is that so? The man in luxurious clothes said disapprovingly. He looked at Leng Hua and said, Manager Leng might not know who I am. Leng Hua smiled, didn't young Master Murong say that you are a relative of immortal Mu Xian from the Huaxian sect? I am the son of the first wife of the Yin family, and immortal Mu Xian from the Huaxian sect is my aunt. He raised his chin slightly and spoke with an unconcealable arrogance on his face. So that's how it is. Excuse me for not recognizing you. Leng Hua nodded. Now, I would like to invite Manager Leng to a restaurant for a meal. Will Manager Leng give me the honor? He asked with an arrogant tone, as if he was certain Leng Hua would agree. Leng Hua gently shook his head, I'm really sorry. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave. He cupped his hands and prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, under the signal of the man in luxurious clothes, a cultivator appeared in front of him and blocked his path. Seeing this, he stopped in surprise and looked at the man in luxurious clothes. What are you doing? Naturally, I'm inviting Manager Leng for a drink. The man in luxurious clothes gestured, and the cultivator rushed forward and reached out to grab Leng Hua's shoulder. Seeing this scene, Leng Hua's expression didn't change. He only took a deep look at the man in luxurious clothes and dodged to the side. When he dodged the man's attack, he raised his hand to grab the man's hand and twisted it behind his back. Crack! Hiss! The sound of bones breaking echoed in the alley, followed by a gasp of pain. Not only was the cultivator whose hand was twisted by Leng Hua in disbelief, but even the man in luxurious clothes and the three people behind him were stunned and shocked. He clearly didn't have any spirit power fluctuations, so how? A thought flashed through the man's mind and he exclaimed, You've learned a cultivation method to hide your aura. That's why you've hidden your aura and cultivation. What kind of cultivation method could hide one's strength and cultivation so perfectly? And he didn't reveal any spirit power aura. This person was just a manager, right? How could there be such a cultivation technique? Could it be that it was taught by the ghost doctor? Lang Hua didn't pay attention to them. Instead, he broke the cultivator's arm and pushed him back to his side. At the same time, his gentle voice rang out. Sir, you said that you are from the direct line of descent. However, judging from your temperament and behavior, you are somewhat lacking. You don't have the demeanor of a direct descendant at all. He ignored the other party's angry expression and said meaningfully, sometimes, one of your decisions will not only harm you, but also your family. Since you were brought here by young Master Murong, I think you should think twice before you act. If you really can't do it, you can ask young Master Murong to avoid bringing trouble to your family. You're threatening me. The man in luxurious clothes stared at him. There was a fire burning in his heart. His emotions fluctuated so much that the hidden illness in his body flared up. His face suddenly turned pale and his body began to twitch. He clenched his teeth tightly. Lang Hua watched, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. This was because he saw that the fingernails of the man in luxurious clothes suddenly grew longer. They were black and purple, like those of a ghost. Not only that, but his face also seemed to have changed. Chapter 2099. Not good. Master's illness has acted up. Quick. Quick. Chain. Those people's faces were filled with panic. Some of them took out black iron chains from their cosmos bags while others held him tightly and tied him up in a few moves. In the end, they even put a sack over him and carried him away. Lang Hua stood there in a daze and only regained his senses after a long while. Seeing that he had been forgotten, he shook his head and walked towards the Yang family. Those cultivators carried him back to the courtyard where they were staying. One of them quickly rushed towards the small courtyard where Murong Yixian was. Master Murong, it's not good. Master's illness has acted up. Murong Yixian, who was cultivating cross-legged in his room, opened his eyes and frowned when he heard the voice. Illness? He got off the bed and walked outside. He saw that one of the cultivators who had been following Yin Ziheng was about to rush into his room, so he asked, "Where's your master?" "We sent him back to his room. However, master's condition seems to be a little serious this time." That cultivator said. "Bring me there to take a look." Murong Yixian said and walked outside. When he arrived outside the room in another small courtyard, he heard a roar that sounded like a ferocious beast and the cultivator's cries of surprise. He pushed open the door and walked in. When he saw the scene inside, he couldn't help but be stunned. He saw that Yin Ziheng's muscles were bulging and the luxurious clothes on his body had already burst open, revealing his strange dark purple skin. Looking up, the color from his neck to his face was also dark purple. Two sharp fangs grew out of his mouth and his eyes were grayish-white with only a little black in the middle. It looked very strange. He opened his mouth and the roar from his mouth was like that of a wild beast. His strength seemed to have increased as well. Even with the black iron chains and the cultivators holding him down, he was still able to push them away. Seeing this scene, he came back to his senses and asked, "Didn't your master ask you to bring the suppressive medicine with you?" "Yes, we did, but young master has finished all of them. The rest are with second master." Second master said that he was going to the alchemist guild this morning and hasn't returned yet. "The rest of the herbs are with him," a cultivator said anxiously. "Then press him down. Don't let him break free. Also, one of you, go and find second master Yin." As he instructed, he frowned as he watched this scene. Suddenly, he saw that the cultivator holding down Yin Ziheng was only using one hand, while the other hand was hanging unnaturally. He asked, "Where did you guys go first? How did he get sick?" How did you injure your hand? The series of questions stunned the three cultivators and they didn't know how to answer. Could it be that they listened to young master's words, went out without telling him, and even made a move against Manager Leng of the Heavenly Pill building, only to have their hands broken by Manager Leng in the end? Seeing the three of them hesitate, Murong Yixian's expression sank and he shouted, "Speak." We went out with young master and saw Manager Leng on the street. Young master told us to follow him. Young master wanted to invite Manager Leng for a drink, but Manager Leng didn't give us face, so young master told me to catch him. Unexpectedly, Manager Leng didn't have any spiritual aura on him, but he was very agile and broke my hand in one move. Chapter 2100. Hearing this, Murong face was as cold as frost. His handsome face was cold as he pursed his lips and didn't say anything. He only looked at the man in luxurious clothes who had a relapse and said, "Since you won't listen to my advice, wait for your second master to come back and have him bring him back." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't pay any more attention to the person being pressed down and directly turned to leave. Not long after he left, a middle-aged man hurried over under the lead of a cultivator. His expression was ugly as he said, "Why didn't he say anything when he finished his medicine? Didn't I tell you to take good care of him? How could something like this happen?" The second master of the Yin family quickly entered the room. When he saw the person who was being pressed down, he hurriedly took out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Not long after the pill entered his mouth, the person who was originally struggling and roaring gradually calmed down. He also collapsed and fainted. Seeing this, he coldly swept his gaze over the cultivators. What's going on? Why did Hein have a relapse in advance? The cultivators were just letting out a sigh of relief when they heard the second master's question. They couldn't help but look at each other before reporting the matter to him. Is it the steward of the Heavenly Pill building? Second Master Yin frowned. Didn't you tell me 2 days ago when you came back? We're here to seek medical treatment. Don't provoke the ghost doctor's people. The young master is insensible, but do the people by his side also have no sense of propriety? If we incur a grudge with the Heavenly Pill building because of this, how will his illness be treated? Have you thought about it? His face was full of anger as he glared at them. Let's see how you'll deal with this after something like this happens. Please punish us, second master. They knelt on one knee. At this moment, they finally understood the severity of the matter. If the young master couldn't be treated, they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to escape the master's anger when they returned. Second Master Yin took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, calming his furious mood before asking, "Where's young Master Murong?" Before second master arrived, this subordinate went to invite young Master Murong over. However, after young Master Murong knew that young master attacked that steward Leng, his expression was as cold as ice as he flung his sleeves and left. Say. That cultivator lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. Say what? Second Master Yin frowned and asked. Tell second master to bring young master back when he returns, the cultivator whispered. As expected, when second Master Yin heard this, his expression changed slightly. He stepped forward and kicked that cultivator. You can't do anything right. He could not hide his anger as he turned around and walked out. The cultivator who had been kicked let out a muffled groan and did not dare to say anything. Second Master Yin came to Murong Yixian's small courtyard and saw him sitting in the courtyard drinking tea. His face was expressionless and distant. Seeing this, his eyes flashed and he walked forward. Master Murong. Second Master Yin. Murong Yishuan looked at him and nodded slightly. I just found out about what Ziheng did. I didn't expect him to ignore my warnings even after I warned him again and again. Second Master Yin came to the table and sat down. He sighed softly. Now that the illness has flared up like this and the situation is getting more and more serious, I still haven't seen the ghost doctor. It really makes me worried. Murong Yi Xian held the teacup in his hand and gently turned it as he said, Second Master Yin, forgive me for being unable to do anything about Ziheng. I've already prepared to return to the sect in a few days. At that time, I'll ask for forgiveness from Mu Xian. Chapter 2101. When Second Master Yin heard his words, his face was filled with anxiety. He looked at Murong Yi Xian and said, Young Master Murong, I apologize to you on Heng Er's behalf. Please don't lower yourself to his level. Now that we haven't even seen the ghost doctor, how can you wash your hands of it? Murong Yi Xian shook his head, it's not that I want to bother with him, nor that I want to let it go. I've said before that the ghost doctor's personality is different from ordinary people. It's not easy to ask her to treat someone. Now, Ziheng even attacked her subordinates. This isn't something I can control even if I want to. Speaking of this, he smiled bitterly, moreover, Second Master Yin, you've overestimated my relationship with her. He originally came with the mentality of giving it a try, but he didn't expect that Yin Ziheng would attack the Heavenly Pill Building's people behind his back. With his understanding of Fengjiu, it was unlikely that she would treat someone. Moreover, if he continued to meddle in this matter, he was afraid that even he would be blacklisted by Fengjiu. Is there no other way? He asked. Murong Yi Xian was about to shake his head, but he paused and glanced at Second Master Yin, saying, I thought of someone. Who? Second Master Yin asked. Nalan Mo Chen. He said slowly, his relationship with the ghost doctor isn't shallow. If Second Master Yin can ask him to speak up for Ziheng, the chances of getting the ghost doctor to act will be higher. He paused, then continued, however, the premise is that you must not provoke the Heavenly Pill Building's people. Hearing this, Second Master Yin was slightly startled, Nalan Mo Chen. Why does this name sound so familiar? He should have heard it before, but he couldn't recall it at the moment. Murong Yi Xian smiled faintly, he's Tianji Elder's disciple. It's said that he's at home now, and the Nalan family is in 100 River City. Rather than visiting the Alchemy Guild's president, why don't you make a trip to the Nalan family? So he's Tianji Elder's disciple. No wonder it sounds so familiar. He nodded and hesitated for a moment. But I've heard that young Master Mo Chen doesn't seem to be very friendly. It should be said that ordinary people could not even enter his eyes, let alone speak up for them. Murong Yi Xian nodded. That's right, but this is indeed an opportunity. If he were to speak up, there's at least a 50 to 60% chance. As long as the ghost doctor is willing to treat him, I think Ziheng's illness can be cured completely. Hearing this, the Second Master Yin was moved. He stopped pondering and answered, I will go to the Nalan family. I hope I can see this young Master Nalan. On the other side, when the sky darkened, Leng Hua also returned to the Heavenly Pill Building. You're back. Didn't you say you'd be back soon? Why did it take so long? It can't be that Patriarch Yang and the waiter asked you to stay for dinner, right? Du Fan reclined on the chair and looked at Leng Hua jokingly as he walked in. You're really a genius. Leng Hua smiled and sat down next to him. Originally, I wanted to leave after delivering the medicine. Who knew that the father and daughter pair would insist on having me stay for dinner? I had no choice but to eat a little and chat with them. I only returned to the building now. Leng Hua said warmly as he poured himself a cup of tea. Chapter 2102. All right, I got it. Leng Hua replied. As he drank his tea, he thought of the man in luxurious clothes he saw when he went out today. His brows twitched involuntarily as he looked up at Fan Lin and asked, last time, you said that the man in luxurious clothes was sick and didn't have long to live. Did you see what illness he had? Hearing this, Fan Lin looked at him with some surprise. You're curious about how long that person has to live. I saw him when I went to the Yang family today. I just happened to see him having a relapse, Leng Hua said. Thinking of that strange scene, he only felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Hearing this, Fan Lin thought for a moment and said, I only saw that person and didn't examine him in detail. However, from his physical condition and his complexion, he really doesn't have long to live. But what illness is that? What happens when he has a relapse? I don't know. Du Fan, who was drinking his tea, felt that something was wrong. He looked at Leng Hua and asked, how did you meet him? He brought those cultivators to block my way. He even said that he wanted to treat me to a drink. When I didn't go, he wanted to attack me. As soon as Leng Hua finished speaking, Du Fan angrily slammed the teacup in his hand on the table. How preposterous. He's got some guts. Hearing his angry shout, Leng Hua smiled. Keep your voice down. It's a good thing that we're resting. Otherwise, we'll disturb the guests. And then did you teach him a lesson? Du Fan asked. Even Fan Lin looked at Leng Hua with some gossip. After all, Leng Hua usually treated people well and rarely got angry with others. I broke the hand of one of the cultivators and said a few words to the man in luxurious clothes. In the end, his illness suddenly flared up. Moreover, the way it acted was a little strange, he said thoughtfully. Thinking of what he saw at that time, he was very puzzled. What kind of illness was that? How could it act like that when it flared up? Fan Lin and Du Fan looked at each other and asked at the same time, how strange. They had seen all kinds of strange things when they were with their master. What other diseases could make him feel strange? His skin turned purplish black when his hair changed, and his fingernails suddenly grew longer, like a ghost. Moreover, his appearance also changed. Two sharp fangs grew out of his mouth, and his muscles expanded. He seemed to have become very strong. Leng Hua said slowly as he looked at Fan Lin. Have you seen this disease before? No. Fan Lin shook his head and pondered, however, I seem to have heard of this situation before, but I'm not sure if it's really the case. So you turn into a monster when you're sick. No wonder he had to seek medical treatment. That kind of illness probably couldn't be cured by ordinary people. It's just that guy doesn't seem to be liked by everyone. Moreover, Master isn't here. I don't think it'll be easy for him to seek medical treatment, Du Fan said carelessly as he waved the fan in his hand, gently fanning himself. Fan Lin smiled and said, that's hard to say. If it's an illness that Master hasn't seen before, she might treat it. He paused and smiled. This has nothing to do with who that person is. It's just a doctor's curiosity about an illness that she hasn't seen before. Chapter 2103. I wonder what good things Master will bring back this time. He said expectantly. He felt that his master would definitely gain something from this trip, other than killing Han Rong. Leng Hua and Fan Lin looked at each other and smiled. One of them walked to the backyard while the other said, I'll go back to the residence to take a look. 2 days later, in a town, 3 people stood in front of the Zhuo residence. We're here. Zhuo Junue turned around and said to Fengjiu. Speaking of which, the old man hasn't been here for a while. Han Yuan stroked his beard and looked at Zhuo Junue and Fengjiu. He asked, how do you want to introduce me? Just say that I'm here for your grandmother. Fengjiu glanced at the old man and said to Zhuo Junue, I'll follow the old man inside. You don't have to introduce me. Just find a chance for me to meet your grandmother. When the old man heard this, he smiled and squinted his eyes. Follow this old man. Be my disciple, cough. Before he could say the word, brother, he saw her glare and swallowed his words. The old man wanted to learn Taiji fist from her. He could not provoke her. Zhuo Junue nodded. I understand. He walked forward and knocked on the door. Soon, the door opened and an old man poked half his body out. Eldest young master is back. The old man smiled and looked to the side. When he saw Hun Yuan stroking his beard, he hurriedly bowed. Hun Yuan, immortal lord. The old man responded and glanced at the old man. Eldest young master, Hun Yuan, immortal lord, please come in. I'll invite the family head. The old man hurriedly invited them in. Only then did he notice that there was a young man in green following behind Hun Yuan, immortal lord. Looking at the young man's plain clothes and lowered eyes, he guessed that he was one of Hun Yuan, immortal lord's people. Don't disturb second uncle. He's coming with me to the West Court. Zhuo Junyue said. The old man was stunned. He watched them walk towards the West Courtyard after entering the mansion. He thought for a while and felt that since the Hun Yuan immortal lord was here, even if he was going to the West residence, he should report to the family head and let him know. Therefore, after closing the door, the old man walked to the main court. Feng Jiu, who was following behind the old man, quietly looked around. She saw that in addition to some maids and manservants, there were 1 or 2 secret guards who were paying attention to the surrounding movements in the dark. Inside, whether it was the pavilions, terraces, or the small stone path, they were all very exquisite and the environment was very beautiful. However, after walking towards the small path leading to the West residence, it was a completely different scene. It could be said that there was not a single servant or guard on the small path. Even the shadow guards hidden in the shadows were gone. Until, after entering the gates of the West residence, it was as if the Zhuo residence and the West residence had become 2 different residences. The only difference was, one was imposing and high class, while the other was quiet and elegant. Why? Since we're all in the Zhuo residence, why is the West Court separated? Before Zhuo Junyue could say anything, Hun Yuanzi stroked his beard and looked back at Feng Jiu. That's right, I haven't told you about this yet. There's a reason for this. Chapter 2104. The second son of the Zhuo family is the head of the family and lives in the East Mansion. That's why there are more people there. You can say that the East Mansion is the center of the family. As for the West Mansion, it's their family. There aren't many people there, only his parents, sister-in-law, and a few servants. Hun Yuanzi pointed at Zhuo Junyue and lowered his voice. You know the reason. It's like that. Feng Jiu pursed her lips when she heard this. She naturally understood after hearing what he said. Zhuo Junyue's second uncle lived in the East residence, which meant that he was the true descendant of the Zhuo family. It was reasonable for him to inherit the Zhuo family head position, so it was natural for him to live in the East residence. However, the West residence was a little too quiet. As she walked around, she felt that even though the West residence and the East residence were part of the Zhuo residence, the West residence seemed to have been separated and abandoned. If the mansion was like this, how depressing would it be for them to live here? Did they feel like they were living under someone else's roof? She thought that if her master knew that his descendants were living like this, he would definitely be very reluctant to let them go. Her heart was heavy as she looked at Zhuo Junyue who was walking slowly in front of her. She finally understood why he was so quiet. After walking for a while, Zhuo Junyue brought them to the living room of the West Mansion. Take a seat. I'll go see my parents. Go, go. The old man waved his hand and found a place to sit. He took out his wine gourd and drank. He didn't forget to tell Feng Jiu, take a seat. Don't be shy. The people from the East Mansion rarely come here. Feng Jiu also found a place to sit. Looking at the simple living room, she couldn't help but ask, why don't they live elsewhere? With Zhuo Junyue's strength, he's qualified to establish a mansion. It's his grandmother. She didn't allow them to live elsewhere. Besides, other than Junyue, his father isn't very talented. Junyue's younger brother is not bad, but it's useless without a good teacher. The old man took a sip of wine and shook his head. Feng Jiu frowned. How can there be no good teacher? Can't the 4 great sects take the test? The old man stroked his beard and thought. Didn't the old man tell you that his younger brother was born crippled? He's always been in a wheelchair. He rolled his eyes. He couldn't remember if he had mentioned this to her. Fengjiu was speechless. When did you say that? You only told me that he had a younger brother and a younger sister, and then you said that their family was very poor and that there were only a few people in the family. You also said that his grandmother lived in a small courtyard because of her poor health and usually only prayed to Buddha and recited scriptures. How could you mention these details? You didn't. He smiled embarrassedly. It's not too late to say it now. It's like that. He's talented, but his legs are useless. He can't stand up, so it's not easy for him to become a disciple. Tell me, who would be willing to accept someone in a wheelchair as their disciple? That's why he's always at home. His spiritual power cultivation is all right, but it's not easy for him to cultivate martial arts. Chapter 2105. Seeing that she was no longer talking, the old man stroked his beard and coughed lightly. Although this old man doesn't have a disciple, this old man's standards are quite high. Although his talent is not bad, he still can't reach this old man's standards, so, hee. Fengjiu sat quietly and ignored him. The old man felt bored and did not say anything else. At the same time, in the main courtyard of the West residence, Zhuo Chuhui was talking to his wife when he saw a familiar figure walk in from the corner of his eye. Both of them were stunned when they saw the person. Junyue. You're back. Both of them stood up and walked toward their eldest son. Didn't you go out to train with the Hunyuan Immortal Lord? Why did you suddenly come back? Did something happen? Father, mother. Zhuo Junyue bowed to both of them and greeted them. He looked at his parents and paused for a moment before saying, I did come back because of something. What is it? Could it be that you ran into some trouble outside? Or did the Hunyuan Immortal Lord chase you back? His mother asked worriedly. Looking at her son who had not returned home for a long time, she felt sorry for him. Did you suffer outside? Look at you, you've lost weight. Mother, I'm fine. Zhuo Junyue said, not knowing what to say. Seeing this, his father asked, then what's the reason? Why did you come back? Looking at the worried faces of his parents, he took a deep breath and said in a steady voice, Dad, Mom, I have news of grandfather. Hearing this, both of them were stunned. What? Grandfather, I have news of grandfather, my biological grandfather, he said slowly. Looking at his stunned father, he said, when I went to the volcano forest with the Hunyuan Immortal Lord, I met grandfather's disciple and learned about grandfather from her, so this time that he spoke slowly and briefly explained the matter. Looking at his father who was still in a daze for a long time, he said, she said that grandfather's wish is to know how his descendants are doing, so she came to see you on behalf of grandfather. He paused for a moment and said, moreover, grandmother asked me to let her know if I had any news. This time, I came back because I wanted her to meet grandmother. Zhuo Chuhui listened in a daze, unable to describe the feelings in his heart. Finally, there was news of his father. Father? To him, it was so familiar, yet so strange. His blood flowed in his body. It was the inheritance of his bloodline. However, he had never seen his father. He did not know anything about his father. He only knew that every time his mother thought of his father, she would cry silently. Now, there was finally news of his father, saying that his father's disciple had come to visit them on behalf of his father. Hearing this, he couldn't help but laugh. There's actually news of him. His laughter was so sorrowful, so sorrowful. Although he was smiling, his expression was uglier than if he were crying. Master, since that's the case, let's go and meet them. Zhuo Junyue's mother said softly as she patted Zhuo Chuhui's hand to comfort him. Chapter 2106. Up ahead. He nodded. He also knows a little about this. Zhuo Chuhui said, let's go take a look. He said to his wife, you stay here. There's no need to go. Alright, then you and your father should hurry over. Don't let them wait too long. I'll get the kitchen to prepare the food. Madame Zhuo signaled for them to hurry. Thus, the father and son went forward. When they arrived at the front and entered the hall, Zhuo Chuhui saw Han Yuanzi sitting in the middle of the hall leisurely drinking wine. Therefore, he shifted his gaze to the young man beside him. When he saw the young man, he was a little surprised. That young man was dressed in green, sitting there quietly with a pensive look on his face. No one knew what he was thinking about. When he saw them come in, he raised his eyes to look at them. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes, and his clear eyes quietly sized them up. This was his father's disciple. How could he be so young? He was a little surprised. He originally thought that his father's disciple would be around his age, but he didn't expect him to be such a young man. Such a young man really surprised him. Immortal sir. He bowed to Han Yuanzi and said with a smile, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Yes. This old man also didn't expect to come to your house so soon. Han Yuanzi squinted his eyes and looked at him with a smile. He took a sip of wine, glanced at Feng Jiu, and said to Zhuo Chuhui, but she's the one who's looking for you today, not this old man. Just treat this old man as invisible. Hearing this, the smile on Zhuo Chuhui's face froze. He thought to himself, this immortal sir is still so direct. Feng Jiu, this is my father, Zhuo Chuhui. Zhuo Junue introduced his father to Feng Jiu. Master Zhuo. Feng Jiu bowed and greeted. Young Master Feng, please take a seat. Zhuo Chuhui gestured and sat down. Master Zhuo, I'd like to see the old madam. Please accompany me. She said directly. Upon hearing this, Zhuo Chuhui paused for a moment before he looked at Feng Jiu and said, Young Master Feng, my son has already told me what happened. However, I still have a few questions for you. Excuse me, she said. You said that your master's name is Chu Batian, a famous character in the lower continents. Then, do you know if their names are similar? How can you be sure that your master is my father? Hearing this, Feng Jiu's lips curled into a smile. Let's not talk about other things. Just your appearance alone is 70 to 80% similar to your father's. If I wasn't too sure before, but after seeing your appearance, I can already confirm that you are his descendants. Hearing this, Zhuo Chuhui was slightly stunned. Did he resemble his father at all? It turned out that he and his father were quite similar. It turned out that his father's appearance was like this. Pausing for a moment, he looked at the youth in front of him and muttered to himself, so what if we find his descendants? He's no longer here, so what does it matter to him what happens to us? I heard that your second son's legs aren't good. I know a little about medicine, so I can take a look at him. She didn't answer his question. Chapter 2107. Her master had more or less the same intentions back then. It was just that she did not want to be too full of herself. However, if they wanted to set up their own residence in the city or somewhere else that belonged to the Chu family, she would do her best to help. Furthermore, her second son could not stand up. If she could treat him, she would naturally help him. After all, he was her master's descendant. As long as he was not an evil person, as long as he was not a vicious person, she would help him if she could. Furthermore, Feng Jiu smiled and looked at the dazed Zhui Yuchuan. I believe that old madam still remembers my master in her heart. Otherwise, your name would not be Chu Hui. Once he said this, the hall fell silent. Zhuo Chuhui lowered his eyes in a daze. Zhuo Junue also stood there quietly. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing this scene, the old man at the side coughed softly and spoke. Bring her to see old madam first. Later, go and see Junue's younger brother. Her medical skills are indeed good. Perhaps there will be some hope. As the old man spoke, he looked at the father and son pair. Although he is no longer around, the fact that he could tell his disciple this proves that he still has you, his descendants, in his heart. Sometimes, many things are unpredictable. Perhaps even he himself did not expect that such a thing would happen back then. To you, it is only a story that you heard from others. To him, it was a personal experience. Anyone who had encountered the tragedy of having their entire family wiped out would not feel good. Since so many years had passed and his descendants had already married and had children, those things could only be flipped over like flipping through a book. There was no longer any discussion about who was right and who was wrong. After a long silence, Zhuo Chuhui said to Fengjiu, "Come with me. I will bring you to see my mother." "Father, if we bring her over like this, second uncle will definitely find it strange. Perhaps even grandfather will know about this." The grandfather he was referring to was naturally the Zhuo family's old master. Although he had news of his biological grandfather and found his successor, it was indeed not good to bring her to see his grandmother like this. Hearing this, Zhuo Chuhui pondered for a moment and nodded. "That's right. Mother has been cultivating in seclusion for many years. If we suddenly bring someone over like this, it will definitely alarm the people in the East Mansion. If they ask, 'Old man, go and visit old madam,' just bring them all over. After all, I've met old madam a few times. It shouldn't be a problem for me to go over." The old man said with a smile. He winked at Feng Jiu and smiled, as if saying, "Look, I'm covering for you." "Then, immortal," Zhuo Chuhui said as he bowed to the old man. "No, no trouble at all." He waved his hand and said with a smile, let's go now." With that, he took the lead and walked out. Seeing this, the three to the Zhuos, of course, Zhuo meanwhile, in the East Mansion. "Oh. You mean the Hunyuan Immortal Lord is here?" The current head of the Zhuo family, the second uncle that Zhuo Junyue referred to, was surprised when he heard this news. Does that mean Junyue is also back? Chapter 2108. Hearing this, he nodded and ordered, "Then let the mansion prepare. Invite them to the East Mansion for a gathering tonight. Speaking of which, it has been a long time since my eldest brother left the West Mansion." Speaking of this, he sighed softly and waved his hand, indicating for the elder to leave. "Yes." The old man replied and then left respectfully. Zhuo family head sat in the main seat, deep in thought. He thought of how his eldest brother's family had been isolated from the rest of the world in the West Mansion. Although they were all in the Zhuo family, his eldest brother's family gave off the feeling that they were living under someone else's roof. He was not the only one who felt this way. He believed that everyone in the East Mansion felt the same way. As for the rumors that had been circulating in the mansion all these years, he had turned a blind eye and ignored them. Even if his eldest brother was not his father's son, he was still his mother's son, his half-brother. However, the family elders did not think so. They were worried that his eldest brother would interfere in the Zhuo family's affairs and that the Zhuo family would fall into the hands of outsiders. Therefore, they did not let his eldest brother interfere in the Zhuo family's affairs and even secretly suppressed him. His eldest brother had been ordinary all these years and did not seem to be outstanding. The only thing that surprised him was that Junyu somehow knew the Hunyuan Immortal Lord. Their family also seemed to have a good relationship with the Hunyuan Immortal Lord. Occasionally, the Hunyuan Immortal Lord would visit the West Mansion. Other than that, there was nothing else. Just as he was deep in thought, he saw the steward walk in from outside. "Family head." The old steward walked up and greeted him respectfully. He came back to his senses and looked at the old steward, asking, "What's wrong?" Family head, the first master of the West Mansion and the others went to the old madam's courtyard. The old steward said, "It's normal for my eldest brother to visit my mother. What's the fuss about?" He said casually. However, he paused and looked at the old steward, asking, who else went besides the first master? The first master and first master, the Hunyuan immortal lord and a youth in green. Hearing this, he was slightly startled, the Hunyuan immortal lord and a youth in green. Didn't they say that the youth in green only came with the immortal lord? Why did they go to the old madam's courtyard? He felt a little strange in his heart, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. On the other side, in the old madam's courtyard. Wait a moment. I'll go in and talk to mother, Zhuo Chuhui said to Primordial Chaos and Fengjiu before walking in. The old man casually sat down by the stone table in the courtyard, while Fengjiu stood and quietly observed the layout of the courtyard. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Zhuo Chuhui walked out from inside. Young Master Feng, come in. My mother wants to see you. He looked at Fengjiu and said. Seeing this, Fengjiu walked in while Hunyuan and Zhuo Junyue remained outside. After they went in, the old man took a sip of wine and looked at Zhuo Junyue beside him. You didn't tell your father that the girl is a girl? Zhuo Junyue paused for a moment and said, I only said that he's my grandfather's disciple. Chapter 2109. How long would this girl have to wait before she was willing to teach him? Fengjiu, who had followed Zhuo Chuhui inside, saw that it was a small hall with simple decorations. Other than a Buddha statue, there was nothing else. In the inner hall, an old madam sat quietly on her knees in front of the Buddha statue. She was twirling the prayer beads in her hand. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound could be heard. Mother, she's here, Zhuo Chuhui said as he looked at his mother in front of the Buddha statue. The old madam stopped twirling the prayer beads and stood up. Zhuo Chuhui helped her to a chair at the side before she looked at the newcomer. A pair of aged eyes landed on Fengjiu as she quietly sized her up. She looked at the woman dressed as a man and asked, Miss, are you Chu Baishan's successor? Zhuo Chuhui was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He looked at Fengjiu. Fengjiu smiled and looked at the old madam. He stepped forward and bowed. Fengjiu greets mistress. My master is indeed Chu Batian. The old madam laughed. I didn't expect him to have a successor. I didn't expect him to still remember that he has descendants. Haha. The three of them chatted in the room. Outside the room, the old man looked at Zhuo Junyue, who was sitting upright. He was curious about the situation inside and kept looking inside. He looked at the expressionless Zhuo Junyue and asked, Aren't you curious about what they're talking about? Aren't you going in to take a look? Grandmother and father are inside. There's nothing for me to do, Zhuo Junyue said. Hee, kid, let me talk to you about something serious. The old man narrowed his eyes and chuckled. He wanted to talk to Zhuo Junyue about something serious, but when he saw Zhuo Junyue's expression and laughter, it was difficult to connect him to something serious. When he saw Zhuo Junyue looking at him without saying anything, the old man coughed lightly and said, It's like this. I think this Fengjiu is quite capable. Take a look. When we were in the volcano forest, the blood demon actually knew her name as the ghost doctor. You can imagine that she's quite famous. Another thing is that her strength and ability are beyond everyone's expectations, especially her medical skills, which are top-notch. It is extremely beneficial to have a relationship with such a person. Others want to have a relationship with her, but they can't. But you are different. You are the descendants of her master, and she has to call your grandmother master's wife. With this relationship, you have to hug this thigh well, lest you regret it when the time comes. At this point, the old man paused and looked inside. He lowered his voice and said, So, if she says she wants to help you, you don't have to be polite with her. It's such a good resource, it's a waste not to take it. Upon hearing the old man's words, Zhuo Junyue glanced at him speechlessly without saying a word. Inside the room, the three of them were chatting. The old madam glanced at Fengjiu, her aged voice pausing between each word as she said, all these years, I didn't allow Chu Hui to set up his own residence because I felt that I owed the Zhuo family. If I hadn't met my later husband and been saved by him, not only me, but even Chu Hui wouldn't have survived. All these years, it was the Zhuo family who has always protected us. The Zhuo family has done us a favor, so even if Chu Hui isn't recognized by the Zhuo family elders, I still won't allow him to abandon the Zhuo family. Chapter 21:10. Fengjiu looked deeply at her and nodded. I understand. However, if you need my help in the future, you can find me at the Heavenly Pill Dispensary in 100 River City. She paused and continued, Mistress, you must have some old ailments. I will stay in the manor for a few days and help you nurse your body back to health. Today's short interaction made her realize that she was a righteous and affectionate person. Since she was her master's wife, even if she later remarried to old Master Zhuo, she was still worthy of her respect. Using silver needles was not a big deal. Hearing this, the old madam was startled and then nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. She then said to Zhuo Chuhui, take good care of Miss Feng. Yes, mother. Zhuo Chuhui bowed and left with Fengjiu. Seeing them come out, Hunyuan and Zhuo Junyue stood up and walked over. Hunyuan looked at them and asked, finished chatting? Yes. Fengjiu nodded and said to Zhuo Junyue, I will stay here for a while. Sorry for disturbing you. Zhuo Junyue did not say much and only said, as long as you don't mind, you can stay for as long as you want. Let's go. We will return to the West Manor first. Zhuo Chuhui said and was about to walk out with them when he saw a figure walk in. He stopped when he saw who it was. Big brother. The person who came was the head of the Zhuo family. He came alone with his hands behind his back. When he saw the people in the courtyard, he first greeted Chu Zhuohui before looking at Hunyuan Zi with a smile. Immortal monarch, how have you been? Second uncle. Zhuo Junyue bowed and called out. Seeing him nod and smile, Zhuo Junyue stood quietly. Second brother, are you here to see mother? Zhuo Chuhui asked with a relaxed expression. Yes and no. He smiled and said, I heard from the gatekeeper that Junyu is back, and so is the immortal monarch. I also heard that all of you came to mother's place, so I wanted to come and take a look. I've already asked the kitchen to prepare. It's rare that everyone is here, so all of you can come to the East Mansion for a meal tonight. Hearing this, the old man stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. That's fine too. This old man has never refused anything that comes his way. But let me say this first. You can have nothing else, but this wine must be prepared. Of course, immortal monarch can rest assured. He smiled and looked at his brother, who didn't respond, and asked, Big brother, do you want to come over for dinner tonight? Let's call all three of them. It's just a family gathering to have a good chat. Seeing this, Zhuo Chuhui said, all right. Then I'll go back and tell your sister-in-law that we'll come over in the evening. All right, I'll go see mother and tell her that she hasn't come out for a long time. Since the immortal monarch is here today, I'll ask her and father to come out together. Then we'll go back first. Zhuo Chuhui said and then left with Hunyuan and the others. Seeing them leave, the head of the Zhuo family walked inside to see his mother first. Chapter 21:11. Zhuo Chuhui nodded. Yes, second brother is very good to our family and takes good care of us. Yes. It's just that the elders of the Zhuo family don't approve of you. Zhuo Zhenglin is quite considerate and capable. Otherwise, your Zhuo family wouldn't be so prosperous. The old man opened the gourd and took a sip of wine. He glanced at Zhuo Chuhui. Aren't we going to visit Brother Junyue? This is an opportunity in front of us. If we miss it, we might not have such a good opportunity next time. Zhuo Chuhui glanced at Fengjiu and said to his eldest son, bring Sir Immortal and Miss Feng over. I'll go talk to your mother about something. Okay, Zhuo Junyuan nodded and glanced at Han Yuanzi and Fengjiu, indicating for them to follow him. This blockhead, the old man muttered and shook his head. He followed him to another small courtyard. When they arrived at another courtyard, before they even got close, they could already hear voices coming from inside. Second brother, mother said that big brother is back and that unruly old grandpa is here too. However, they went to the East Mansion to visit grandmother. Mother told us to go over later. She asked the kitchen to prepare some food. She said that we should have a good meal together as a family. The speaker was a young girl in an orange dress. She looked pretty and was about 15 or 16 years old. She was half squatting beside a wheelchair and looking at her second brother. The man in the wheelchair was in his early 20s. He was dressed in a sky blue robe and had a gentle smile on his handsome face. He held a book in his hand and was currently listening to the young girl's words. As if he had sensed someone's arrival, he suddenly turned his head and looked outside the courtyard. Big brother? Sir Immortal, you're here. His smile deepened when he saw familiar faces. He said to the young girl beside him, push me over. Big brother, grandpa. Zhuo Yuzhen smiled and greeted the two of them happily. She pushed her second brother forward. Zhuo Junyue's expression softened when he saw his sister-in-law. He looked at the two of them and said, I've been home for a while. I just came back from visiting my grandmother. As he spoke, he took out something from his space and handed it to the two of them. This is a gift for you. Thank you, big brother. The two of them spoke in unison. Zhuo Yuzhen first opened the Qiankuan bag handed over by her big brother. She took out a lot of beautiful and fun things from it, including 2 or 3 defensive magical weapons. Zhuo Junyang took out some magical treasures, as well as some books on cultivation and medicine. Delighted, he said, Big brother, I really like these gifts. Yes, I like it too. Zhuo Yuzhen also smiled happily. It's good that you like her, he said and introduced her to his sister-in-law. This is Fengjiu. The two of them looked at the silent young man in green and secretly sized him up before greeting, young Master Feng. Fengjiu nodded and stepped forward. He said to the man, give me your hand. Hearing this, Zhuo Junyang was slightly surprised. He looked at the young man in front of him. At this moment, his elder brother said, her medical skills are very good. Let her take a look at you. Chapter 21:12. He lowered his gaze to hide the strange look in his eyes. Because he was unable to move his legs, he also liked to study medicine. The young man in front of him looked even younger than him, but when he checked his pulse, he could feel that there was something unusual about him. He could only feel that as the youth's slender and fair fingers touched his pulse, a wave of spiritual energy flowed through his veins and throughout his body. However, that wave of spiritual energy was retracted in an instant. I have to take a look at your legs. She looked at the man in the wheelchair and said. Zhuo Junyang couldn't help but be taken aback. He instinctively looked at his elder brother. When he saw his elder brother nod, he put away the book and Qiankuan bag in his other hand. Then, he bent down and rolled up his pants to his knees. Fengjiu squatted in front of him and was surprised to see that his legs had not shrunk. They were just pale as if there was no blood in them. She reached out and felt that the veins in his legs were almost non-existent. How is it? Can it be treated? The old man could not help but ask. It can be treated, but it's a little troublesome. As she spoke, she stood up and looked at Zhuo Junyue. Although the veins in your brother's legs are not broken, it's almost as if they were broken. It's an extremely rare case of tendinitis. For those who suffer from this condition, the veins in their entire body are almost non-existent. It's the first time I've seen partial tendinitis like this. However, compared to the whole body, your luck can be considered good. Zhuo Junyang was stunned. He did not know how to react. It was the first time in so many years that someone said that he was lucky. It sounded quite refreshing. Moreover, could his legs be treated? To be honest, perhaps it was because he had seen too many doctors and had been disappointed time and time again. At this moment, these hopeful words no longer stirred up any hope in his ears. Suddenly, he heard his elder brother's determined voice. He could not help but look up. If she says it can be treated, it can definitely be treated. Zhuo Junue looked at his younger brother and said again, her medical skills are very good. Zhuo Junyang was slightly taken aback. When he heard these words, he could not help but turn his gaze towards the youth in green. He saw that the youth in green was looking at his elder brother with his eyebrows slightly raised. His expression was one of surprise, as if he had not expected his elder brother to say such a thing. Well, that's right. Since she said she can cure it, then she can definitely cure it. I don't know about other old men, but since she dares to say this, then she must have a way. Han Yuanzi stroked his beard and glanced at Fengjiu. What do you mean by trouble? Do you lack medicine? Seeing that both of them were so sure of her medical skills, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile and look at the old man. Yes, to treat his leg, there are a few medicines that are more important and more difficult to find. What medicine? I'll go look for him. Zhuo Junue said. Fengjiu glanced at him and slowly said, 500-year-old 9-section sky lantern grass, 1,000-leaf scale flower, and blood deer tendon. Zhuo Junue frowned when he heard that he had never heard of it before. He secretly noted it down. I'll look for it. Chapter 21:13. That's right. That's why I said it's hard to find the medicine. Fengjiu smiled and looked at Zhuo Junue. Are you sure you can find it? Zhuo Junue met her smiling eyes and said in a low voice, even if I can't find it, I still have to find it. I won't let go of even the slightest chance. As long as his brother could stand again, he would try anything. Zhuo Junyang's heart warmed at his brother's words. He looked at his taciturn brother and smiled gently. Big brother, it's all right. I'm used to it. Don't worry, I'll find all the medicine you need. He reached out and patted his brother's shoulder. Don't worry. Zhuo Junyang did not say anything else and only smiled. He knew that since his brother had said so, he would definitely do it. However, could he really stand again? His gaze fell on his legs. He had read so many medical books, but he still did not know what was wrong with his legs. However, this young man named Fengjiu only took a glance and checked his pulse to know his symptoms. To be honest, he was quite surprised. Could it be that this young man's medical skills were really that good? Seeing this, Zhuo Yuzhen said happily, that's great. Second brother's legs can be treated. Father and mother will be very happy to hear this news. As she spoke, she looked at everyone and said, Big brother, second brother, grandfather, big brother Feng, let's go to the front. It should be time to eat. Come, come, come. Let's eat. The old man nodded and turned to pull Fengjiu outside. He said to the three people behind him, the three of you, quickly follow us. Seeing the two of them leave the small courtyard, Zhuo Junyang asked, Big brother, is this young Master Feng's medical skills really that good? Where is he from? Where did you meet him? Seeing that the two of them had left, Zhuo Junue said to his sister-in-law, she's our biological grandfather's disciple. We met her some time ago, but we only found out that her master is our biological grandfather recently. Looking at his sister-in-law's stunned face, he slowly said, previously, after coming back to see father and mother, she went to grandmother's place. However, only a few of us know about this matter. Second uncle didn't reveal it. Now, I'm telling you because I want to tell you that she is indeed a capable person. Don't treat her like an ordinary person. He paused and looked at his brother. Since she said your legs can be treated, they can be treated. Her medical skills are very good. I believe her. The two of them were stunned for a while before they recovered. Actually, they knew a little about their family's relationship with the East. However, their father and mother didn't tell them before, their parents and they had not told them much. They only vaguely, they had known. But they had never asked them. Now their big brother to tell them. So she was their biological grandfather's disciple. No wonder. A truly capable doctor would rarely come to their doorstep like this. Thinking about it, it must be because their biological grandmother was his master. That's why he came to treat him. Thinking of this, he felt relieved. It was fine as long as he knew that person's background. Chapter 21:14. It's a long story. I'll tell you about it when I have time. Let's go. Don't let father and mother wait for too long. Zhou Junue said as he pushed the wheelchair outside. Zhou Yuzhen didn't say anything else. Zhou Junyang changed the topic and asked about his big brother's encounter this time. In the front yard of the West residence, there was a round table with 8 delicious dishes on it. There were also 2 jugs of fine wine. The atmosphere was relaxed and cheerful. Miss Feng, since you're here, just treat this place as your own home. Take whatever you want to eat. Don't stand on ceremony with us. Zhou Chuhui smiled as he poured wine for her and Han Yuanzi. When Zhou Junyang and Zhou Yuzhen heard their father call the green-robed youth Miss, they were momentarily stunned. Zhou Junyang shifted his gaze to the green-robed youth sitting next to Han Yuanzi. No matter how he looked at him, that person was still a young man. But why big brother Feng, you're a girl. Then wouldn't I have to call you big sister Feng? Zhou Yuzhen was even more direct. After hearing her father's words, she directly asked Fengjiu. Yes, I'm a girl. I'm wearing men's clothes to make it easier for me to move around. Fengjiu took a sip of wine and smiled at her. I really couldn't tell, Zhou Yuzhen said in surprise. Ahem. Hearing this, Fengjiu coughed lightly, not knowing how to respond. Was she too much like a man? All right. In any case, it wasn't the first time someone had mistaken her for someone else. She doesn't have any feminine charm. That's why your brother and I didn't know she was a girl when we first met her. The old man smiled as he glanced at Fengjiu and picked up a piece of meat to eat. Father Zhou and Mother Zhou looked at each other and smiled, urging them to eat more. Although there were only 8 dishes, each dish was quite large. In the end, everyone was full, but there were still a few dishes left. I've already asked someone to prepare the guest rooms. Don't worry and just stay here. Our West residence is usually quieter and no one will disturb us. Mother Zhou smiled as she called over a servant girl and asked her to bring them to the guest rooms to rest. The journey back from the past few days was tiring. Now that they were full, they naturally wanted to lie down and rest. Thus, they followed the servant girl to the guest rooms and prepared to take an afternoon nap. They'll go to the East residence in the evening. After arriving at the client's room, the old man fell asleep immediately. Feng Jiu asked someone to prepare hot water for her to take a bath before she went to bed to rest. She hadn't slept on the bed for a long time. Now that she relaxed, she fell asleep in no time. The 2 guests were going to take an afternoon nap. Zhou Junue and his family went to the hall and dismissed the servants. They didn't know what they were talking about. In the evening, when the East residents sent someone to invite them, they asked Zhou Junue to wake Han Yuanzi and Fengjiu up. The old man remembered that there was a banquet in the East residence and woke up when Zhou Junue knocked on the door. He tidied up and left. As for Fengjiu, when Zhou Junue knocked on the door, only a sleepy voice came from inside. Chapter 21:15. Zhou Junue continued to knock on the door when he heard that. Open the door. When Fengjiu heard the knocking on the door, she felt like she had just woken up. She wanted to sleep, but the knocking on the door kept her awake. In the end, she lifted the blanket and walked out of the room. She opened the door and glared at the person who was knocking on the door. "Didn't I tell you? I don't have to go. Your second uncle invited an old man. It'll take me a lot of effort to explain to him. Besides, I'm not hungry yet. You guys can go. Don't worry about me. I still want to go out after I wake up." After saying that, she scratched her head and closed the door. She walked back into the room and lay down on the bed to continue sleeping. When the old man in the courtyard heard that, he stroked his beard and said, "It's fine if she doesn't want to go. Your second uncle didn't say anything about letting her go anyway. Let's go." He called out to Xue Junue and walked out leisurely. Xue Junue paused for a moment. "Then I'll get someone to prepare some food for you." After saying that, he turned and left. Fengjiu did not have enough sleep. She fell asleep again after a while. When she woke up, it was because she was hungry. After tidying herself up, she walked out of the room and saw that the sky was already dark. The lights in the residence were already lit. Seeing that the night was not bad, she wanted to go out for a walk. However, when she walked out of the courtyard, she remembered that Xue Junue had asked someone to prepare dinner for her. Forget it. She'd better go out for a walk and see if there was anything to eat. When she thought of that, an expectant smile appeared on her face. She walked briskly out of the residence. In the east residence, the old mistress did not see Fengjiu at the banquet. She asked, "Why didn't Fengjiu come with you?" "Her. Don't worry about her. She was still sleeping when we came out. Junue already told the kitchen to prepare dinner for her. It's fine," the old man said with a smile. He took a sip of the wine and said to the Zhuo family head, "This wine is indeed mellow. It must have been hidden for many years, right?" The head of the Zhuo family was surprised that his mother would ask about the azure-robed youth beside Master Hunyuan. Just as he was wondering what was strange about the azure-robed youth, he heard Master Hunyuan's words and couldn't help but smile. "It is quite old. If a mortal monarch likes it, I'll give you 2 jars later." "Ha ha ha, then this old man won't be polite." He laughed loudly, extremely happy. On the other side, Fengjiu wandered around after leaving the manor. She liked to eat the local delicacies, especially the small things from the street stalls. After walking around, she came to a small stall and sat down, eating a snack that even she couldn't name. "Have you heard? Recently, many of the black market's branches have been destroyed. Many industries have suffered heavy losses. The black market has been closed recently. I wonder if the problem has been solved." Fengjiu, who was sitting in a corner eating, raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard this. She looked back and saw 2 or 3 cultivators eating at another table while chatting. "The black market has been destroyed? Why haven't I heard about it?" The people who were chatting heard the azure-robed youth's question. They sized him up and laughed. "So what if you've heard? The people who dared to attack the black market must have a powerful background. Let me tell you, I also heard that the owner of the black market was seriously injured. His condition is very bad." Chapter 21:16. Look at what you're saying. If this wasn't the case, how could I say that? I heard that the injury was very serious. Think about it. If the owner of the black market wasn't in a good condition, how could the black market's power be suppressed so badly? That's right. The black market's power here is not to be underestimated. I didn't expect that the trouble this time would be so troublesome. In my opinion, if the owner of the black market can't get through this crisis, the black market will be destroyed along with him. Hearing this, Fengjiu thought for a moment and asked, "Then, have you heard of any power that made a move against the black market? Here, which power is strong enough to compete with the black market? From what I know, the owner of the black market's power is unfathomable. How could he be injured so easily? Could it be that there's some inside story? We don't know about that. The news hasn't spread, so we can't know even if we want to. In my opinion, even the people of the black market don't know what's going on. I think only the core members know the whole story. However, to be able to become a core member of the black market, he must be someone with some ability. Small people like us don't have the right to meet such a person. The man smiled and took a sip of wine. He looked at Fengjiu and said, "Little brother, why are you so concerned about the black market? Could it be that you're from the black market?" As he spoke, he looked at Fengjiu from head to toe. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, "With my power, how could I be from the black market? I'm just curious. Also, as you said, the black market has a certain degree of stability here. I'm just surprised that it was destroyed." Hearing this, the men laughed and chatted with Fengjiu. After a while, Fengjiu left first. She didn't go back to the Zhuo family. Instead, she walked around the city and walked into a shop that sold medicine. "Young master, what do you need?" The medicine boy came up and asked. Fengjiu looked at the medicine shop and asked, "Where's your shopkeeper?" "The shopkeeper is inside." "Young master, is there something you need?" The medicine boy looked at the cyan-robed young master in surprise. "Well, tell him to come out," she said as she walked around, looking at the medicine in the medicine shop. Seeing this, the medicine boy walked inside. When he came to the inner room, he said to the shopkeeper who was sorting the medicine, "Shopkeeper, there's a young master in green outside. He said he's looking for you." When the shopkeeper heard this, he said, "I understand. You can go out first. I'll come out after I'm done here." The shopkeeper sorted the herbs in front of him and tidied them up before walking out. When he came outside, he saw the young man in green looking around the store. He didn't know what he was looking for, but when he saw the young man's face, the shopkeeper was a little puzzled. He didn't know this person. Could it be that he was not looking for him, but for the medicine? Thinking of this, he took a step forward and asked with a smile, "Young master, do you need any medicine?" Fengjiu looked back at the shopkeeper and asked, "Are you the shopkeeper here?" "Yes, I am the shopkeeper here. Is there anything I can help you with?" he asked with a smile. Seeing this, Fengjiu turned her hand and a token appeared in her palm. The shopkeeper looked at him with a smile. Suddenly, he saw a command medallion in the young man's hand. When he saw the command medallion clearly, he was shocked. His eyes widened in disbelief. You. Let's find a place to talk." Chapter 21:17. This lowly one did not know that Master was coming and did not welcome you. "Please forgive me, forgive me." The shopkeeper hurriedly bowed after entering the room. His expression was agitated and his eyes shone with excitement. It was their master, the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. He never thought that he, the shopkeeper of this small medicine shop, would have the opportunity to meet their master. It was simply too inconceivable. "Rise." Fengjiu kept the token and casually sat down in the room. "I'm here to ask you to send a message to the Heavenly Pill building. Bring me a brush and ink." Yes. The shopkeeper hurriedly replied. After bringing the brush and ink, he respectfully stood to the side, secretly sizing up his master from time to time. He knew that his master was in the 100 River City's Heavenly Pill house, but he didn't expect that his master would go out and come here. He had only heard of this master but had never seen him before. He was curious, excited, and even more so, respectful. This was the first time he had seen his master at such a close distance. One could imagine how excited he was. Fengjiu finished writing the message and sealed it with a watermark before handing it to him. "Send it out as soon as possible. I'll come back in 2 days." Yes. He replied. Seeing that his master was about to leave, he asked, does master have a place to stay here? This lowly one has a courtyard behind here for master to rest. There's no need. She waved her hand and stopped in her tracks. She turned back to look at him. I'll be staying in the Zhuo family for a while. If there's anything urgent, you can go to the Zhuo family's west residence to find Zhuo Junyue. Yes, this lowly one will remember. He respectfully replied as he sent her out. After seeing his master leave, the shopkeeper hurriedly sent someone to deliver the letter to the Heavenly Pill building in Hundred River City. There was also a black market in the city, but Fengjiu did not go there. Now that she was staying in Hundred River City, the people in the black market would definitely know. If the owner of the black market was in a serious condition, he would probably send the letter to the Heavenly Pill building. As for the Zhuo family, her mistress had to be nursed back to health, and Zhuo Junyang's legs had to be treated as well. She would probably have to stay here for a period of time. Furthermore, she was indebted to the owner of the black market. If something really happened, she would have to make a trip back. Because she had heard the news about the black market, she did not have the mood to shop anymore. She walked one round before returning to the Zhuo residence. The moment she entered, she was welcomed by the old man. Where did you go? I thought you had snuck away. Han Yuan let out a sigh of relief upon seeing her return. I just went out for a walk. What's wrong? What's the matter? Feng Jiu said and sat down in the courtyard. When do you plan to teach the old man Taiji Fist? He sat down and asked. Feng Jiu glanced at him and said nothing. Seeing this, the old man glared at him. You're not trying to go back on your word, are you? You can't go back on your words. Otherwise. What else? She raised her eyebrows and asked. Otherwise, this old man will continue to pester you and follow you closely. Fengjiu rolled her eyes and said, wait until I'm in a good mood. She got up and walked into the room. She said to Han Yuan, who was about to follow her, I'm going to rest. Don't follow me. The old man choked and glared at her. Didn't you say you were going to help Junyu's grandmother recuperate? Are you going to eat, drink, and sleep all day? Isn't this a pure waste of time? Chapter 21:18. Seeing this, the old man was very bored and could only turn around and return to his room. However, in the middle of the night, Fengjiu quietly went out and went to the old madam's courtyard in the east courtyard. This was what she had told her during the day. At night, she would come to treat her body. She only needed to use needles for 3 days and take medicine for a few days, and her body's illness would be cured. When Fengjiu left the room, the old man knew. When he came out and saw that she was going to the east courtyard, he muttered and went back to sleep. The old madam left only one confidant to keep watch at the east courtyard. When she entered the courtyard, the confidant by the old madam's side retreated and stood guard outside the courtyard. When she entered the room, she saw that she was sitting on the bed with her eyes closed and a blanket covering her body. She called out, "Mistress, are you still awake?" She thought that she would sleep for a while before waking up, but from the looks of it, she had been waiting here the whole time. I couldn't sleep, so I waited here for you, the old madam said and gestured for her to sit down. She asked, "Did you have dinner tonight?" Fengjiu smiled. "Yes, I went out for a walk and ate outside." Hearing this, the old madam nodded. "You are his disciple, but you are neglected like this. I should have invited you to dinner tonight." "I'm fine." She was not someone who cared about these things. "Can Junyang's leg really be cured?" The old madam asked, her gaze landing on Fengjiu. "It can be cured, but I can't cure it because I haven't found all the medicine. It will probably take some time," Fengjiu said as she took out the silver needles. "His leg hasn't moved for a long time. Even if it recovers, he will need to practice before he can walk again. I'm afraid he won't be able to walk in a short period of time." Hearing this, the old madam nodded and asked, he doesn't know any medical skills. He didn't teach you medical skills, did he? No. Fengjiu raised his head and looked at her with a smile in his eyes. Actually, Master didn't teach me anything because he only left behind a strand of primordial spirit, so he couldn't teach me anything. However, he helped me open up the meridians in my body and gave me the Qingfeng sword. He also left me many secret manuals. All these years, other than the skills she had learned in her previous life, she had learned everything by herself from secret manuals. Hearing this, the old madam was slightly startled. Although she had already vaguely guessed it, after all, she had said today that it was only a strand of Chu Baishan's primordial spirit that had been left behind. Naturally, it was impossible for him to teach her anything. However, just because he called her master, she was willing to help them like this. Today, there was a hidden meaning in her words. If the eldest son's family wanted to leave the Zhuo family and establish their own residence, she could help. However, she had still rejected this possibility. Speaking of which, she was being selfish. You can call me old madam from now on. You don't have to call me mistress anymore, she said. Fengjiu was slightly surprised. He looked at her. Why? Now that I'm the mother of the Zhuo family's head, wouldn't it be a mess if you call me mistress? She smiled and said, just call me old madam. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded. All right, then I'll help you with the acupuncture. She replied and leaned against the soft couch quietly, allowing him to help her with the acupuncture. Seeing Fengjiu, who was dressed like a young man in green, earnestly inserting the needles, she couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded, her thoughts drifting away. Chapter 21:19. The old madam was lost in her memories and gradually fell asleep because of the acupuncture. When she opened her eyes again, Fengjiu had already put away the silver needles. Are you done? She asked, her old voice slightly hoarse. Fengjiu poured a cup of water. Drink some water. Your throat will feel better. As she spoke, she handed the cup of water to the old madam. Today's treatment is done. You just have to do it again tomorrow and the day after. I'll make some medicine for you to take. After a while, all the old illnesses in your body will disappear. Hearing this, the old madam nodded. Thank you. This is what I should do. She smiled and stood up. Other than this, I don't know what else I can do for you. You don't owe us anything. You've done enough for us. She patted her hand and said, it's getting late. You should go back and rest. All right, then I'll go back first. Fengjiu said, then turned and left. Her figure flashed and quietly disappeared into the night. Mistress. The middle-aged woman outside came in and saw her mistress sitting on the soft bed. Seeing that she was awake, she asked, Mistress, do you want to rest? I can't sleep. Chat with me. She waved her hand and gestured for her to sit down and chat. Yes. The middle-aged woman walked forward and sat down. That night, the lights in the small courtyard were lit all the way until dawn. Early the next morning, Zhuo Junyue went out. He first went to the city's auctions to find out if the 3 spiritual medicines that Fengjiu mentioned were available. He then went to the century-old medicinal shops in the city to ask around. He only returned after noon. Fengjiu slept until noon. When she walked out of the room, she saw the old man pacing around the courtyard with a troubled look. It was rare to see the old man like this, so she asked, What's wrong? What are you doing so early in the morning? The old man glanced at her and said, What early in the morning? It's already afternoon. Only you can sleep until now. She raised her eyebrows and looked at him, who looked like he wanted to say something. She smiled and said, Do you have something to say? Why didn't he say anything? She's so bashful that I feel uncomfortable just looking at her. As she spoke, she came to the courtyard and stretched. It was rare that the old man didn't glare at her this time. Instead, he glanced at her from time to time. After hesitating for a long time, he said, "This old man just received the news. There's something I have to deal with." Upon hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly startled. "That's it? Then you should go. What's there to be troubled about? Wasn't the old man afraid that you would sneak away if he left? Who knows if the Heavenly Pill building will be able to find you next time?" He couldn't help but mutter as he stared at her worriedly. Fengjiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "That's my business. Haven't you heard that a monk can run away, but the temple can't? What was there to worry about? If you can't find me here, then go to the 100 River City's Heavenly Dan building. Besides, there's no need for me to avoid you, right? So, you won't go missing with the old man." When the old man heard this, his eyes lit up. "Then when this old man is done, I'll go to 100 Rivers City to look for you. You'll find time to teach me Taiji Fist." Chapter 21-20. Hearing this, her eyes flashed and she stared at Hunyuan for a while. Then, her lips curled into a strange smile. "Your position in the Nebula Immortal sect is really not low. Of course." He puffed out his chest and raised his chin. Stroking his goatee, he said proudly, "It's not just the Star Cloud Immortal Pill sect. Even the other 4 sects know of this old man. What's your current cultivation level? Peak Immortal Supremacy?" she asked. Although Fengjiu did not say anything, the old man stared at her. "Are you looking down on this old man's cultivation level? Let me tell you, Peak Immortal Supremacy is not a level that anyone can reach. Many old monsters have failed in the Heavenly Lightning refinement when they entered the Immortal Supremacy level. Only a few people in our generation have reached our level. Of course, we don't count those devil cultivators who don't walk the righteous path. Then you must have been stuck at Peak Immortal Supremacy level for a long time, right? You can't advance anymore." Fengjiu stared at him with a smile that was hard to decipher. Seeing that she looked down on him, the old man snorted. "Do you think it's that easy to advance from Immortal Supremacy to Immortal Emperor? Do you know that there are very few Immortal Emperors in the upper reaches of the continent?" "Oh. Very few. In other words, there are some." She nodded thoughtfully. Above Immortal Sage was Immortal Supremacy, and above Immortal Supremacy was Immortal Emperor. Her current cultivation level was at Peak Immortal Sage, and the only Immortal Supremacy she had met was this old man. As for Immortal Emperors, she had never seen one before. Of course there are. How can there not be? Not counting the ones in the upper reaches of the continent, there are 4 Immortal Emperors in this continent. They are. He was about to say it when he saw that she was waiting for him to continue. He laughed. "I'm not telling you." After waiting for a long time, he did not continue. In the end, he laughed softly. She could not help but twitch her mouth. "Didn't you say that if I wanted to investigate, I wouldn't be able to find out?" She looked at him and said, "Don't you have something to do? Why aren't you going? How about this? When this old man sees you again, this old man will tell you. I'll be leaving first. You can go back and tell that blockhead Jun you. When the time comes, this old man will directly go to your Heavenly Pill house to find you. I won't come here." He knew that by the time he was done, she wouldn't be here. See you then." She nodded. Seeing this, the old man felt relieved and left. It seemed that she would not hide from him. After he finished his business, he would go to the 100 River City to see what the Heavenly Pill building was like. After the old man left, Fengjiu went outside and found a maidservant waiting outside the courtyard. She asked the maidservant to bring some food over. After a simple meal, she was about to go to Zhua Junyang's courtyard and Zhua Junyue came in. "Where is he?" Zhua Junyue came to the courtyard, but did not see the old man. He could not help but feel strange. The old man has something to do, so he left first. He asked me to inform you. Feng Jiu said as she walked out. Let's go. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.